Hello, everybody. Hello, puppies and kittens. We have a. I'm a little thrown off because we have a new mustachioed villain in our midst. How you do, Lawrence?
Tired. I got a whole 4 hours of sleep. But you know what? That's pretty usual. So,
You sound like you're still hungover from New Year's.
no, I didn't even get like super sloshed on New Year's. I wanted to, I just didn't. Yeah, but they got a new haircut. Figured it was time for a change. I'm getting a texturizing something or other later today. So I'll actually be able to like style it. Right now it doesn't look great, but
he's doing a mullet. And
yeah,
he's lucky that Trump has done something so atrocious. I can't even be bothered by it.
Yep. I also didn't ask. This makes I think I've been pretty uncomfortable with myself for a while. So this does make me feel better.
I wish I had that problem. I'm usually just other people that are uncomfortable around me.
Well, yeah, but the people who are uncomfortable around you usually suck.
Yeah, New Year's was a little bit of a threat to me. I mean, one of my kids called and said, "Happy New Year." I try to respond back. I'm like, "Will it be?" And I said, well, I don't know. I'm late on my bike payment. I'm late on my rent. I can't afford anything. Like, yeah, I'm a couple $100 in the hole of my primary account. This is a great way to start a year.
Well, look on the bright side. However rough you started the year, at least you did not violate international law and criminally kidnap the duly elected leader of a sovereign nation, violating all sovereignty laws and apparently all American laws on who is in charge of starting wars, since this cannot be seen as anything other than an act of war. So,
I'm not sure that anybody in Geneva had anything to say about this, but I would bet that our sniveling American Congress won't do shit either.
No, but they didn't sign off on it, which, as I understand, is required in your country to start a war.
And then the Supreme Court just said again that Trump could do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah, it's literally just Hitler 2.0, but fatter and with dementia.
Yeah, fatter
and worse hair somehow. Didn't think that was possible.
Anyway, Happy New Year, even if it is our last.
Well, Carlin always wanted to watch the world blow up, and here we are.
Yeah, I'd rather start with beer. Finally, after a long time, wheat beer.
Oh, there is definitely booze in this coffee. Yes.
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah. This is the last beer I have in the house because I can't afford it anymore.
We have a very appropriate question for Lawrence in the chat.
Oh no, not again.
What is it?
Well, it's now in the private chat, so it's to be displayed.
Wait, the one that just
okay. So Jojo Freelancer KUP says, "Does the Book of Job have Greek influence?"
That's a really good question, actually, because we don't know when it was written.
Like Little Sinun. It might have been. I mean, there's probably some, but it's not like super significant. A lot of this stuff is a lot of its influence comes from way earlier than anything Greek. Mm-hmm. So
it's obviously, stylized off of a very old story and very, ye olden day, but someone much later trying to talk ye olden day. But yeah, it's interesting though, because that's one of the ways that we do try and get a beat on things. The Greeks were very influential in their time.
I get the impression that the whole story was written in answer to an atheist's quandary. I mean, how do you, or to be more appropriate, to an agnostic pondering, right? Well, when bad shit happens, you give God credit when good things happen, but you don't give your God the blame when bad things happen. What the fuck is up with that? How do you know that there's a God actually doing anything? And then they write this whole story to justify their position in response to that.
And it doesn't justify anything. You
Yep.
know what it reminds me of? Touched by an Angel. Did you ever see that?
Is that there's a Scottish woman and a black lady, and they
Irish woman and a black lady, yeah, and they're angels and they go around.
yeah.
Every
I
episode
remember
of
my
it
mother
is
used to watch that.
I've seen some episodes. It did actually teach me one useful thing. That's where I learned the origin of the song Strange Fruit. But in general, it was just a badly written show, but it did show something of the Christian mindset and how they tried to proselytize. You would have an episode where something would happen, something bad would happen, there would be questions, there would be concerns, people would struggle with questions of faith. The answer was always an emotionally cathartic moment where they would come to the conclusion that the answer is love. That would never be stated, it was implied. But the point is, the answers that believers give to all of these rational questions is the attempt at emotional catharsis. And whether or not you accept that answer depends on whether or not you're willing to feel your way out of real questions. And I am not, because that's bullshit.
Okay. All right. Do we have any kind of comments before we begin on Job 23?
Yes. So this is Job continues with. Wait, does it continue? No, he actually responds to Eliphaz the Yemenite from chapter 22, and his response is 2 chapters long.
Okay. Shall we start?
Sure.
Okay. Then Job answered, "Today my complaint is bitter. His hand is heavy, despite my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even into his dwelling. I would lay my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would learn what he would answer me and understand what he would say to me. Would he contend with me in the greatness of his power? No. But he would give heed to me. There, the upright could reason with him, and I should be acquitted forever by my judge. If I go forward, he is not there, or backward, I cannot perceive him. On the left he hides, I cannot behold him. I turn to the right, but I cannot see him. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come out like gold. My foot has held fast to his steps. I have kept his ways and have not turned aside. I have not departed from the commandment of his lips. I have treasured his words in my bosom. But he stands alone. And who can dissuade him? What he desires, that he does. For he will complete what he appoints for me. And many such things are in his mind. Therefore I am terrified at his presence. When I consider, I am in dread of him. God has made my heart faint. The Almighty has terrified me. If only I could vanish in darkness, and thick clouds would cover my face. Well, here's something good news, Job. The reason you don't see shit anywhere you look is because it's not fucking there. Get over it, and then you don't have to hide anymore.
No, it's because he's blind.
The invisible and the non-existent do look remarkably alike.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're just going to move on to chapter 24 now?
And
No
basically,
commentary.
Yeah. Ignore the painstaking writings that I put on Word display.
I love
in
your hair
Cambria
today,
font.
by the way. Tomer, I love
Yeah.
your hair. It looks really
Thank
good.
you. I had a haircut. So yeah.
Well, we
It's
focused on
basically-
Lawrence's. So only great. You did actually style the curls nicely.
Yeah, it's not thank you, it's natural.
Well, you got to do something to make the curls do a thing and not bleh, just frizz all over.
Basically it's short at the back and long on the front. Though I do want to use hair mousse because I heard it's very good for curly hair. I want to try
Yeah,
that.
it definitely can be. There are mousses that are good for curly hair. But
Yeah.
not to interrupt your commentary on Job. Poor Job. Oh my God. Like, Oh, look at the pretty kitty. Oh, yes,
Wait,
he's
is it just
holding
me or
daddy hostage.
Hold on, I just noticed we don't have the names displayed.
Yeah, I was gonna mention it. Peter.
Oh, okay. Well,
What they called?
we
What they called jumbotrons? No, was that something else?
jumbotrons. That's at like a sports game. That the kiss cam that got the
Oh,
couple at the
that's a
Coldplay concert. That's a jumbotron.
Oh, okay. So what's it called? The thing that's at the bottom.
Oh, a
Um,
name card.
name
No,
cards.
but
Yeah.
like on the news, they have like
Oh, the ticker
rolling
tape.
text.
That's
It's-
called a lower third.
I mean,
Lower third. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much
well, maybe
thinking of.
in anyway.
J.R. Pence just offered $10 for Aaron's beer fund
Yes,
hope-
thank you.
in the hope that the new year brings better times.
Oh, amen. And
The way it started, $10 might not last you a long time, Arn. Just
beer's
saying.
cheap in Texas, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of beer drinking in Texas. Apparently not as much as we drink whiskey since Canadian boycotts are shutting down Jim Beam. But,
Yeah, are we great again yet?
yeah, nobody will drink your booze anymore, sorry.
Yes.
And considering how much we drink, that is saying something.
I saw this comedian who said, he's waiting for he wasn't expecting that America was going to get so great. I mean, it's just getting greater all the time. Can we just
Mm-hmm.
do we have to be so great?
Yeah, I mean, you're just an international pariah and abhorred by all civilized nations. It's exactly what you've always wanted, right?
What is remarkable to me is how many people still have not learned a lesson.
Mm.
Still.
What was that really insipid line people would say whenever you complained about injustice in life? And they would say things like, well, life is a classroom and experiences are lessons, and a lesson will be repeated until learned. I get the feeling America has been put back a grade.
My unfinished journey says Tomer says he got a haircut. Which one did he cut?
Third from the left.
Basically, the mainly the back. I noticed that people like to pet my hair, so I just kept the long one as well. I wanted to just keep the long one, the long parts, but just keep it more stable. Because
Is anybody
very
else
dynamic.
pondering the fact that Tomer is actually trying to answer a question that clearly did not want an answer?
I mean,
he asked
how
the question.
autistic, sweetie,
joke-
how
which-
autistic
which
is this
hair?
panel? Okay,
A haircut. One.
question
Which one?
question for the comments chat. How autistic do you think this panel is as a percentage? Just give us a guess.
Don't want to know the answer.
Yeah, I've been accused of being autistic myself.
150%.
Mm,
I'm just waiting for Tomer to say that's not mathematically possible.
Yeah.
Well, and I just found out
Thereby
that when
proving
we,
my point.
when we
Exactly.
discuss Christianity from now on, we can only be talking about Eastern Orthodoxy.
Oh, right.
Apparently, that's the only Christianity. And every other form, everybody that has ever dedicated their lives to God in any other religion deserves to go to hell.
Including the Catholics and the Protestants and the Coptics and all the
Everybody
branches
that-
of all of those.
Everybody that ever renounced worldly treasures and sacrificed of their own lives in order to dedicate their lives to God, they all deserve to go to hell if they weren't Eastern Orthodox. That's what my interlocutor said in my most recent debate.
Right. Look, I understand there are different brands of Christians, and it's very tiring when you are a Christian to have to answer for these stupid ideas of an alternate branch that you did not subscribe to. I do understand that, but they are still Christian. you have to answer at least as a collective. You can absolutely say, I am not that branch. I do not subscribe to that. I also think it's bullshit. 7-day creationism. There are lots of Christians who are way too smart to believe in that. But just don't pretend that nobody had any reason to think that might be part of the conversation.
Yeah. And the point of that debate, what is Christianity logical? There are common beliefs throughout the denominations, or at least most of the denominations. And that's what we were going to be discussing, or what the title of the debate would imply that we would be discussing.
Yeah. There are Unitarian
They did not allow
Christians.
the topic of the debate to come up.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, you could say like Christianity is either illogical or a cult, because if you're not Nicene, then you're a cult. You're not official religion. You're not really Christian. But if you're really Christian, then you believe in, was it the Trinity? Is like the main thing.
Yeah, if you're really Christian, then you're Scottish, is what I got out of that.
Yeah. Well, you know what, though? I would say that you should thank him for conceding the debate before it began. Because by his definition, all forms of Christianity except his own are illogical. And statistically, 99% of all the Christians that have been of other forms of Christianity, which means that 99% of Christianity is illogical. So you win because your opponent said so.
I don't remember off the top of my head anymore, but there's a passage in Paul that admits exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
That all of the Christian wisdom is foolishness to unbelievers, to everybody else.
Yes. They just don't understand because they're not like us, which is totally a logical argument and completely evidence and not at all an appeal to your own ego and sense of in-group, out-group. That's totally what that is.
Jojo Freelancer KUP says, why did they choose a Gentile for this story? Did they see him as a Noahide? Did they try to proselytize to Gentiles to accept Noahidism? And did they see Israel as a superior kingdom?
I think this character was very old with already a certain amount of established lore. And because references to Job, the character of Job, not necessarily this book, but the reference, it's referring to a very old character. I mean, no matter how much you're an American exceptionalist patriot, if you write a fan fiction about King Arthur, he's going to be British. It's like, at least if you want to set it in any kind of a historical context and not go, modern AU.
Also, Noahidism, or Noahide laws is a much later idea. It's based on reading the Bible and being, which laws did God give to the people before? And then being like, so these are the laws that God has given all humankind.
Right.
Go forth and multiply, you could argue, or is something similar.
And also which things then before Sinai and this graded, if Abraham boiled a calf in his mother's milk, well, God never told him not to do that. So how would he know?
And it should also be noted that the book doesn't really tell us if he is an Israelite or not. It just says that he is from the land of oats. So that's, at least Clines writes that it does not mean that Job necessarily is a foreigner, for most Jews of the exile period and beyond, if that is the time of the book's composition, lived outside the borders of Israel, and the patriarchs themselves, since that is ostensibly the time in which the story is set, were almost as often to be found outside the land as within it. The book of Job simply does not say whether or not Job is an Israelite. By leaving open the question of his race, the book effectively makes his experience transcend the distinction between Israelite and non-Israelite, Jew and non-Jew. We do not know that the storyteller had such a conscious intention, but such is the effect he has created.
That's true. He may not, whether he intended it or not, it's supposed to be a universal element. And I mean, if the character was old and you don't know if the people you're talking to are going to think of him as a Jew or not, depending on their local backlore, it's better to just leave it obscure and let people fill in the blanks.
Okay, so we have no comments on this chapter, do we?
I mean, do you doubt me?
All right, you start your commentary. I'm getting more coffee and
there is
booze.
another comment by Satan, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we have, let me see. Let's see, that was Jojo Freelancer KUP says,
there's one from Satan after that.
Yes, Satan, yes.
all right, so
Should I just read it? You got it?
yes.
Okay. As an ex-Eastern Orthodox, I can say it is the most boring Christian denomination. These guys were on par with Muslim apologists. They were that bad. Yeah, Muslim apologists, they're really like lacking. It's actually, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that like think about the way early YouTube was, how cutthroat everything was. Aaron, you were there, you remember.
I've
how everyone was
seen Muslim
just about
apologists that were better than these guys, to be honest. Although there was one guy who I really liked.
I'm gonna finish my thought, Peter.
Okay, go ahead.
So,
Sorry.
The thing is, it was so cutthroat back in the day that everyone had to like it was like shit. What's the process called? But when you're like in the in some metalworking factory and you're like sharpening everything and hammering everything, so that's basically what it was. Everyone was working on their arguments. Their arguments had to get better because they were out for blood. So that was the culture on the internet in the early internet days, or the early religious debate days on the internet. And the thing is, I think Muslim apologists arrived on that train late, so they're kind of they're just lagging.
They're catching up.
I
You
like.
have to work through the bad excuses, even if they've already been disproved, to get to the not quite as atrocious excuses. Is that a rule of apologetics?
You know what? I think that's just a rule for a lot of stuff. Things get better over time. You got to try harder eventually. It's like it's like an evolutionary arms race, except it's not really that evolutionary.
I think you guys are being far too hard on this, because I liked Anthony. He just didn't say anything. I think that was the best defense.
Well, I mean, he did, and I probably shouldn't say anything about it, but just he was not a good speaker. I'll just leave it at that.
No.
Probably
that's fine.
Public debates is not the best,
Yeah, if that's not your skill, that's not your skill. We are all good at some things and shit at others.
Yeah, indeed.
Play to your strengths.
Okay, so Tomer, are you going to quit holding us up here?
Yes, of course. Sorry about that. I'm new to this. I'm new to this channel for over 4 years. Okay.
Oh my god, I love you guys.
Yeah. Okay, on verses 2 and 3, Habel comments, quote, Job emphasizes anew the intensity of his conflict with his God. Job's complaint, siach, is more than a cultic cry of lament, as we see in Psalms 55:18, which is 17. It is also a formal legal complaint against God, as in 927. Job's complaint is here called meri, a word which means defiant in its present form, but suggests a pun on the adjective bitter, mao, found also in 7:11. The defiant nature of Job's complaint results from unremitting oppression by the hand, quote-unquote, of his adversary. The hand symbolizes God's unwarranted afflictions and endless torment of Job, as we see in 1921. A similar motif appears in the Babylonian Ludlul Bel Nemeki, quote, his hand was heavy upon me, I was not able to bear it, quote. To resolve his conflict once and for all, Job seeks a direct confrontation with his God. He wants to meet God face to face to press his suit. Since God has remained in hiding, in spite of Job's challenges and accusations, Job anticipates taking the initiative and going directly to God's celestial court to deliver his summons.
Yeah, but are they even going to let him into Mar-a-Lago?
Well, I suppose that depends what God. If you come in with big beard, I'm going to smite you all, God. Yes, probably. Brown Jesus, however, will be shot by ice before he gets within 500
Yeah.
feet.
Well, there's a new stigmata for you. Okay, on verses 4 and 5, Clines notes that Job explains how he would arrange, in Hebrew, arach, his case, like an army drawing up its lines of battle before the enemy. Compare Judges 20:22 and 1 Samuel 4:2. He would fill his mouth with arguments, so as never to be short of a charge or a response, no matter how the case proceeded. Previously, Bildad envisaged Job's mouth as being filled with laughter at his restoration in 8:21. But Job has serious work to do first. Clines writes, quote, "Instead of being in the dark about God's intentions and having to guess what charges he might have against him, he would be able to understand all that was going on and prepare himself to respond in every detail, filling his mouth with arguments." End quote. Job is to be alone against God, and, quote, "the friends are not wanted in this discussion," end quote, according to Dorm. Previously, Job envisaged his friends as witnesses to the facts, though not partisans on behalf of God. Now, Job imagines himself as having to counter God by himself.
It's hard to stand against evil without allies.
Yeah, I kind of experienced this myself.
Especially when
We
your
all
government has
do.
declared you a terrorist group.
Yes. Even when you're not a group.
No,
Well,
I'm part of multiple groups that have now
that's
been
true.
called terrorist groups.
Satanic Temple?
Nope, not that one yet.
Oh, I'm surprised. I suppose
Yeah, well,
the
technically,
religion
yes.
thing.
Technically, yes. Everybody that holds non-traditional, non-Christian views regarding marriage, regarding gender and sex orientation, equality, and any of that.
Right.
Yeah, there's a task force that seeks to eliminate us. Anybody that favors left-wing politics, there's a task force now, a presidential task force that wants to identify all of those people, round us all up, and eliminate us.
And I
They're
don't
just
even know
looking
how
for
I
a
can
way.
help.
I guess they're just looking for a spin that will enable them to do that and still win the court of public appeal or court of public opinion.
They go by degrees like the hangman.
Yep.
If you don't know that poem, look it up.
Okay, on verses 6 and 7, Hartley comments, quote, "For a moment Job fears God might oppose me with a great legal power in order to win a decision against him more by brute force than by reason." Compare 9:32 through 34, 13 through 14. But Job emphatically rejects this thought. God would not press his charges to the point of coercing the court to render a guilty verdict against an innocent man. It is obvious that Job rests his hope for a favorable decision on the judge's just character. Job states his conviction again that before God's throne an upright man, Yashar, which Job is confident that he is, may enter into legal argument with God. Job is certain that God will acquit him forever once he has heard his arguments. In this pericope, Job's confidence, both in his innocence and in the possibility of finding a resolution to his plight, has reached a new height.
That is really interesting because he rests his faith in being exonerated on God's justice. And it reminded me of a parable of Christ's that always just, it's so funny. Because in this parable, it's one of the lesser known ones. In this parable, there's a judge who has no fear of God, doesn't give a shit about justice. He's corrupt as fuck. And there's an old widow woman who is poor and is, some injustice has been done to her. She's, lenders or whatever. And she has no resources but she brings her case before him and he dismisses it. So she goes to his house and just cries out constantly for justice. He can get no peace. He can't sleep at night. He can't eat his meals in peace. She just harasses him constantly. And then finally, he's like, I don't give a shit. I don't fear God or law, but I just want this woman to go away. So he gives her justice. And then Jesus says to treat God like the unjust judge. Nag him into doing right by you. I've been in that marriage. I left.
On 8 and 9, Clines notes that many commentators take verses 8 and 9 to be intrusive, and that Job's expectation of escape from the lawsuit in verse 7 should have been followed directly by verses 9. I wrote 19 through 13, but maybe it was opposite. Others, however, establish a connection between verses 9 through 13. Maybe, I don't know. Others, however, establish a connection between verses 9, 10, and 10 based on the opening 4 key of verse 10. Thus, Dorm takes verses 10 through 13 as explaining why God eludes the searches of Job, and Driver takes them as stating that the reason why God will not let himself be found by Job, since he knows that he is innocent, yet will not be diverted from the hostility towards him. Clines continues, quote, "It would indeed be bitter if Job to say that the reason that God will not enter into dispute with him is because he well knows that Job is innocent, and that he does not want to be called to account for persecuting a righteous man unjustly, but that is no reason to deny that this is what Job means, as Bott and Piquet do. This is not a speech, after all, of longing for the divine, but a speech of frustration at not reaching any conclusion to his case, of continuing terror at what the next onslaught of the Almighty might be, in verse 16, and of a life-denying wish to vanish in darkness, in verse 17, which strikes a note we have not heard since 6, 8, and 9. Job has earlier depicted God as a spy upon humans, as we've seen 7, 17 through 20, as sustaining Job's life simply in order to pay him the more close and cruel attention in 10, 13 through 17, and as a vicious enemy in 16, 7 through 14. It is no surprise now if Job portrays God's elusiveness as a sign of bad faith, suggesting that, quote, the God avoids the God avoids the sufferer precisely because he knows that the trial will turn out in Job's favor, end quote, according to Good.
Yeah, that sounds about right. The powerful God, afraid of any kind of justice or autonomy. Oh, look at your puppy.
On 11
I know
and,
if
sorry.
our pets decide whether we go to heaven, Aaron's going. And most Republican politicians are not.
Okay, 11 and 12, Hartley comments, quote, Job rests his confidence in a redemptive outcome to his trial solidly on his faithful obedience to God. He has directed his feet to follow the steps God has laid out for him without any deviation. In other words, he has not departed from God's commandment. The commandment is identified as the teaching that comes directly from God's lips or mouth. In fact, Job states that he has treasured or stored up God's words in his breast. That is, he has ingrained God's teachings deep inside him in order to guide his daily life. God's word hidden in his mind keeps him from sinning. Compare Psalms 119:11. With this affirmation, Job rejects as meaningless for him Eliphaz's exhortation, quote, receive instruction from his own mouth and place his words in your heart, end quote, in 22:22. Since God's word has never departed from his thinking, he has no need to restore it back into his heart. These two verses are, to this point, Job's boldest assertion of innocence. I see a comment.
Trevorn 369 says, there is usually a saying, there is two sides to the same story. Did Job isolate his friends because they probably had a different view of Job that differed from God in his view, right?
Or
I mean,
is this view right?
we
Uh,
definitely see clashing worldviews. Sorry, go ahead, Lawrence.
yeah, I was definitely gonna say something like that, where it's like they're clearly arguing about, like, I mean, you could imagine their perspective would be different, right? They're not the ones getting shit on by God, so
Mm.
of course they'd have a different perspective. They're like, "Oh, keep your head up, buddy," and he's like, "You
No.
bitch, no."
Yeah. Lawrence?
What?
Oh, sorry. I thought your mic cut out. Never mind.
Okay, on 13 and 14, Habel writes that Job affirms that God is one, Hibu be'achad, which anticipates the confession of Israel about the singularity and sovereignty of Yahweh, Deuteronomy 6:4. This sovereignty, however, presents a problem for Job if he wants to prove his innocence. Once God has made a decision, his decree is irrevocable and executes his decision as he wills. God apparently decided that Job should be afflicted unjustly, as we see in 1:6-12, without any opportunity for Job to vindicate himself in 9:28 and 13:26. God's decree in Hebrew chok for Job's life encompasses both his lifespan and his divinely assigned lot. Ironically, Job has performed more than the decreed requirement, quote unquote, for his life. Yet, God still controls his fate, together with everyone else's. Humans are subject to God's eternal program, and Job's chances of breaking into that program and changing God's plans, which seem to involve a unique case of intolerable injustice, quote unquote, are very slim.
Yes, isn't it nice when God is intolerably unjust for no fucking reason?
And finally, 15-17, Clines notes that so far, Job seemed to have been in control. He imagines a journey towards God, having to negotiate with him face to face, lacking no confidence, and being convinced of his innocence and of God's willingness to listen to him. Job's only emotion is his desire to be done with the situation that he suffers from, being conscious that could be called rebellious, quote unquote, but not being ashamed by it, because he thinks there is a good reason for his rebellion in verse 2. Now, however, his language seems different. He speaks of feelings of terror, being dismayed, in dread, with God making him limp, weak, and terrified. Job has been annihilated by darkness, which covers his face. Clines argues that this can only be explained by, quote, a renewed recognition that, do what he may, Job is unable to stay God's hand. Whatever God desires, he does, verse 13, and nothing that Job desires is of any consequence, end quote. God has already made a decree, in Hebrew chok, against Job, who is the victim of malign power. Even if that decree has been fully executed, Job anticipates violence against him, waiting in the wings. The experience of his suffering is not what terrifies Job, but rather when he considers, quote unquote, i.e., turns his mind to his state and thinks out its implications, that the terror starts up. The object of the terror is God, whom Job is dismayed at his presence, being in dread of him. The final sentence is problematic, and it is unclear if Job intends that it is God's involvement of his sufferings that terrifies him the most, or that it is a wish to vanish in darkness and thick gloom covers his face, according to Pope. It could also mean that Job feels that he is annihilated by darkness and that he has actually entered the world of darkness. Clines concludes, quote, what is clear, despite the exegetical problems, is that his thought, as so often, has taken a downward turn, a dying fall. The language of longing with which the speech opened has given place to a depressive language that entertains no future. There is something worse than all his sufferings. The darkness that covers him is, quote, not only his suffering, but his complete helplessness in the face of reality, end quote, according to Budd. This powerful depiction of a legal encounter with God has in the end only served to sharpen his senses of God's injustice in his own case and total irresponsibility in the governance of the world. for it was all a falsity, that longing for being listened to and treated fairly, and the darkness means precisely that there is nothing to be seen. No end to his own suffering, no pattern for the universe, no contours, and no meaning.
But God
So
is
I
infinite
did-
love and wisdom, and he's omniscient. So he knows all things, and there's no reason to test anybody.
Well, yes. Moral problems aside, I was actually looking at this last verse quite a bit here. So yeah, as Tomer noted, there are different ways you can translate it. I think it's based on a manuscript variation too. So it's definitely. I think this one's more difficult for a few reasons. So in chapter 22, I think who was talking? Eliphaz, right? Yeah, Eliphaz. He claims that he says to Job, therefore you say, what does God know? Can he judge through the deep darkness? And then he goes on to have like a bunch of other rhetorical stuff. The thing is, like, if Job is under the impression that God cannot judge through deep darkness, then yes, this would be a longing, right? Like, if only I could vanish in darkness. Although the way that it's presented in the previous chapter suggests that he absolutely can judge through deep darkness. But this one is kind of strange to me, right? Because like I have God already surrounds himself in darkness quite a bit, so it's not like it would be out of his capability to enter into a space like that.
He spent eternity in darkness before he had an idea, his very first idea, apparently.
Well, yeah,
It was
something
kind of
like
shit.
that. Yeah. I mean, I'll get more into this later in the show today. But I was wondering how, because there are so many different ways to translate that last verse. Tomer, how would you feel would be the best way to translate that verse?
So the Masoretic text reads, "Ki lo nitzmati mipnei choshech v'mipanai kisa ofel." So the last part is, and from my face darkness covered. Mipanai kisa ofel. That's at least how I understand it.
Yeah,
from me, darkness was covered, has been covered, or something.
Right,
like
but that was that's also with the negative there, right, in the Masoretic.
Umipanai. That's the second section. The first section is kilo nitzmati mipnei choshech. So there is kilo. Lo is in the negative, because not nitzmati from darkness. So the word nitzmati seems a bit difficult. The root is probably tzadik mem tet, tzadik mem taf, which according to BDB dictionary is to put an end to or exterminate. So so if we read it plainly, it could be read as, because I wasn't cut off from darkness, and from my face thick gloom has concealed me, or something like that. Though as I see it, there are several Clines gives like I think 10 possible understandings of tzemet or tzamat, including silence by Kenning, both destroy and silence by Halot, dry up, thus be silent according to Dorm, hem in as in RSV, cut off in KJV, dismay by RVMG, flee by Delich, complete by Barth.
There are quite a few ways to translate that, but it's like there's the interpretation that this would be like a wish, right? Like if only I could, would that, like, I'd be cut off from his presence. There are I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but I have to look more into it, but I feel like there's more to this verse.
Yes,
So
yes.
I'll leave it at
I mean,
that.
Clines has like 3 sections
Right.
on this verse.
Okay.
The
I'll
notes on this
definitely
verse. So yes.
I'll definitely take a look back at Clines for it then.
Yeah.
I actually find this chapter most interesting from a psychological perspective because, as much as we discuss the logic of things, and that's very important, humans are not all that terribly logical in their behavior and thoughts. I don't know if you've noticed, maybe. But in human psychology, if everyone around you tells you you are wrong, at some point your brain is more likely to fold and go with them, even if you know better. Particularly when you are under stress, such as if, say, you buried your family and lost everything and were ill. Anything like that. This is what Job doesn't do. Because religion has, throughout all the ages, given us narratives and reasons to make sense of our suffering. And that can be a good thing to a point. But if what you are going through does not fit the narrative comes first in practice, even if it shouldn't. And that's what Job's friends are doing. They're saying, God is just, you must have earned it, blah, blah, blah. This is the narrative. We have to find a way for your life to fit this narrative. And Job objects, as many have objected before. But by this point, when all your friends tell you, no, you're wrong, you don't have enough faith, must have done something, yada, yada, most people will figure out some way to blame themselves to fit the narrative. And there is no measure for how much harm that has done. But it is very much to the credit of this book that Job does not do that. And that he stands up and insists, no, even if none of you are with me, I know the truth. And I'm going to stand on that. And I respect that.
All right. So my
Yes.
unfinished journey
Oh, sorry.
says, "Hail Aaron and Panel, and hail Falcor." Is everybody muted?
We were.
Guess it's talking about Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Guess it's talking about Jesus. It's nobody else who gives a fuck.
Well, I'm glad we included that.
Yes.
Well, it's you can always pepper in a little Jesus, right?
Yes.
Do Christians have a grinder, like a pepper grinder, but it's Jesus? They just sprinkle Jesus on everything.
Well, yes. I mean, no. It's specifically, there is one person who loves finding Jesus everywhere. In this chapter specifically, and that is Gregory the Great, who first says that the words of Job here obviously read a prophecy about the advent of Christ the Redeemer. Obviously,
of course.
Because he says, who else except the mediator between God and humankind, the man Christ Jesus, is denoted by the title of equity, concerning whom it is written, who of God is made to us wisdom and righteousness, in 1 Corinthians 1:30. And whereas this same righteousness came into the world against the ways of sinners, and we get the better of our old enemy, by whom we have held captive. So let him say, I do not want him to contend with me with great powers, or oppress me with the weight of the mightiness. Let him judge me justly, and my judgment will come to victory. In other words, for the correction of my ways, let him send his incarnate Son. Then by the sentence of my absolution, I will turn out as a victor over the plotting foe.
Help, I'm being attacked.
Yes, you are being held prisoner of love. Your cat loves you so much. I swear to God. Oh, so someone made a comment about the thing I said about sprinkling Jesus on things, and they said, add Satan for spice. And it occurred to me that Jesus is the salt of the world and Satan is spicy. So you just label your salt and pepper shakers. Just little Jesus, little Satan.
You
Wait,
need
I'm
to
doing
toast
that.
so
I'm doing
You
that.
need to toast that Satan.
wait,
I
wait, wait,
tend
wait.
to
So
use
if
more Satan than most
wait,
people.
so if you sprinkle Jesus in your salad, does that make him crouton?
In this case, I'm thinking of a salt shaker, but I mean, you could always go with some Parmesan.
The flesh
The
is
croutons-
bread or something like
The
that.
croutons are his
Croutons.
flesh, and the mayonnaise is his. Oh,
Okay.
But no, we don't need to talk about what the mayonnaise is. I'm
All right,
having
I'm out.
a red wine vinaigrette.
Mm.
Oh, the Opal guy said Jesus is mayonnaise. No, honey, that's white Presbyterian Jesus is mayonnaise.
That's the XXX part of the Bible. Oh wait, it's all of it.
Oh my God, the Bible is so perverted.
Yeah, and we still read it.
Yeah, well,
That's why I love it. I love it.
little.
Yes, so who shall read this next?
Are we going to do a second
Yes.
chapter today?
Ooh.
You know what? No, we won't.
All right, bye everyone.
Let's not.
2 chapters in the first hour. Wow.
Yes.
Let's see. Who wants to read?
You know
What
what?
is it?
I'll read this one. I'm gonna have a lot of commentary on 26. So I will. I'll read this one.
Yes.
Why are times not kept by the Almighty? And why do those who know him never see his days? The wicked remove landmarks. They seize flocks and pasture them. They drive away the donkey of the orphan. They take the widow's ox for a pledge. They thrust the needy off the road. The poor of the earth all hide themselves. Like wild asses in the desert, they go out for to their
That'll be the
toil.
name of my band.
Wild asses of the desert. That's pretty good. Scavenging in the wasteland for their young. They reap in a. Oh wait, hold on. No, I can't do that right now. They reap in a field not their own, and they glean in the vineyard of the wicked. They lie all night naked without clothing, and have no covering in the cold. They are wet with the rain of the mountains and cling to the rock for want of shelter.
They're naked and wet.
They're naked and wet. I know. I was gonna say that's pretty good spot to be in.
And they're
Naked
naked without
and
clothes,
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
as opposed to being,
Naked with clothes. Yeah.
yeah.
As we all are.
I mean,
It's true. Without clothes, you are in fact naked.
There are those who snatch the orphan child from the breast and take as a pledge the infant of the poor. They go about naked without clothing. Though hungry, they carry the sheaves between their terraces. They press out oil. They tread the winepress, but suffer thirst. From the city, the dying groan, and and the throat of the wounded cries for help. Yet God pays no attention to their prayer. There are those who rebel against the light, who are not acquainted with its ways, and do not stay in its paths. The murderer rises at dusk to kill the poor and needy, and in the night is like a thief. The eye of the adulterer also waits for the twilight, saying, "No one will see me," and he disguises his face. In the dark they dig through houses. By day they shut themselves up. They do not know the light, for deep darkness is morning to all of them, for they are friends with the terrors of deep darkness. Swift are they on the face of the waters. Their portion in the land is cursed. No treader turns toward their vineyards. Drought and heat snatch away the snow waters. So does Sheol, those who have sinned. The womb forgets them. The worm finds them sweet. They are no longer remembered. So wickedness is broken like a tree. They harm the childless woman and do not go to the widow. Yet God prolongs the life of the mighty by his power. They rise up when they despair of life. He gives them security, and they are supported. His eyes are upon their ways. They are exalted a little while and then are gone. They wither and fade like the mallow. They are cut off like the heads of grain. If it is not so, who will prove me a liar and show that there is nothing in what I say? Again, I kind of find there's a good amount of, like, I mean, I guess just again a feature of wisdom literature.
Hmm.
A lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
lot of
verse 21
proverbs.
seems to be talking about MAGA.
Right, yeah. The
Yeah.
first part is definitely, yeah, they take away stuff from the poor people. Yes,
But I like
yeah,
the
the thing
last
is,
verse when it says that if you can't show that there's any truth to what I said, then by default it is a lie.
right, yeah,
I like that. So no longer do you have to prove that I'm wrong, that what I say is true until proven otherwise. If you can show that there was no truth to it when I said it, then it's already a lie. I love that.
the stuff about, like, earlier on here,
Omer, in
about
the original Hebrew, is that, am I reading it right? I mean, is that that same interpretation you would give it?
It's the Hebrew is kind of difficult here, so it reads the mathematically is ve'im lo efo mi yachsiveni ve'yasem le'al milati. So yeah, it is a bit hard to understand what it reads.
But
And
would
if
it
not,
does it mean that it's a lie if you can't show that there's any truth to it?
I mean I think it's open to interpretation. It depends on what translation you use.
if it is
Clines
if it is
Clines, for
not
instance,
so,
sorry.
who will
It-
prove me a liar and show that there is nothing in what I say?
Yeah, that's one way. Clines renders, if this is not so, who can prove me wrong? Who can reduce my argument to nothing?
Mhm.
And Habel has, if this is not so, who will gainsay me or prove my arguments worthless?
Yeah, I think those are essentially the same. Okay.
Yeah, I do want to see the Targum though, if there is anything.
It's giving
hilarious in
speak
it.
now or forever hold your peace kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
Yeah,
attitude I'm getting from it.
Or I think it's more of like, hey, listen, I am gonna hold steadfast in my convictions unless one of you can prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the definitely the stuff like earlier on with taking away, in verse 3 especially, they drive away the donkey of the orphan and they take the widow's ox for a pledge. Widows and orphans are like the, in biblical literature, they are like the most oppressed people.
Yes.
They are always like the ones you're supposed to look after the most. So this is like the whole, like, oh, look how shitty these people are. They even do something as horrible as that. But then when it kind of goes on to talk about, where was it? Yeah, the people going through the city and hurting the poor and the needy, and saying that, yeah, the eye of the adulterer also waits for the twilight, saying no eye will see me. This is, I'm pretty sure this stuff has been in Proverbs. Again, we're not there yet, but I'm pretty sure some of this stuff is like,
Which verse?
well, I'm saying that certainly the imagery in verses 13 through 17 is in Proverbs, like 100%. It's in there. They talk about them, thieves in the night, kind of like waiting to attack, stuff like that. I forget the chapter, but it's definitely in Proverbs.
Dark deeds. Yeah. And although it's I in the second half of this, it almost sounds like he's agreeing with the narrative of the others that God does punish the wicked, perhaps after a time, but still. And that's like, clearly he's not doing that. That's part of the complaint earlier that Job gives, is that God lets the wicked be, powerful and continue to oppress and continue to just break the law with impunity and cause suffering and
Invade
damage
foreign
to the innocent.
countries despite the Geneva Convention and despite Congress, all of that.
Yeah, ignore all laws and do whatever they want.
Yeah. So my unfinished sock says, "Don't sprinkle Jesus on your salad. Like and share the stream instead." And then Robin Blossom, XC20C, I don't know what that is, looks Greek, says, "Why do Christians think they have been enlightened by the Bible when, if they just observe society, they would see that there is virtually nothing truly enlightening in Scripture?"
Enlightenment is kind of what you bring to it. An enlightened person can find enlightening things in the Bible because of their own mental capacity. It's not. I maintain there's
Some
not
people
much.
can read War and Peace and come away thinking it's a simple adventure story. Other people
That's
can
true.
read the ingredients on the back of a chewing gum wrapper and unlock the secrets of the universe. Can anyone in the chat recognize
Is that
where
from
that?
Matilda?
What's that?
Is that from Matilda?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I
No.
don't. I
Or
wouldn't say
or
that
was
it has
the
virtue.
Galaxy? What's it called
w-
again? That
Nope.
series? Okay.
I wouldn't say that there is nothing truly enlightening in Scripture, because I think there is a lot of enlightening stuff in Scripture. You just need to read to understand what is enlightening in Scripture.
The thing is, like, even Paul says some enlightening stuff. He said, like, he had a whole bunch of shit to say about hypocrites and how you shouldn't be a hypocrite, which, you know, I think the Christians just pass over that part a lot of the time. And then
Quite
there
ironic
is,
coming from him.
yeah, I know, right? He was, oh yeah, there's also the thing about money is the root of all evil, kind of a fact. So
I do
Or
really
oil,
like the
depending on your economy.
I do like the rich man going into heaven thing in the
Oh,
opening
sure, sure, yeah.
because I just like how it's satirical it is, like almost.
yeah, like
Yeah.
going through the eye
It's
of the
surprising that
needle.
the Jew recognizes that. Strange that Christians don't seem to anymore.
No, they don't. Well, you know, there's so many conflicting moralities in the Bible. You can just pick your favorite and then say that it's biblical. Technically,
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah.
yeah, fuck, I can give you a biblical justification for anything you want. Although I will say it's far easier to find a biblical justification for cruelty and evil than it is for most good actions. Though not all. There's some that are easier.
Any more commentary on this, Tomer?
I would say that Christians would view, when they look around and they see civilization, good things, they'll automatically attribute it to Christianity, rather than realizing that it's older. And
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean,
it's like a confirmation
half the-
bias. They believe
half
that
the-
this is where everything comes from.
yeah, but they also feel obligated to. It's sort of a semi-conscious thing. They're not fully conscious of it, but they're not totally unconscious of it either. It's yeah, sort of instinctive to defend your group and attribute everything good to it to try and, I don't know.
It's definitely the
Defend
end
it.
thing for Christians to claim, like science and getting rid of and the emancipation of slavery and what else?
How many
All the things
scientists
that-
and abolitionists has Christianity burned? I have no idea, but the number is very fucking high.
It's so strange that in medieval Europe there was a Christian that was discovered something. It's so weird. It must be because of his Christianity.
Yes, because nobody can look at the world around them without the supernatural power of God and notice anything, because intelligent people don't exist.
And then they only discovered what they were allowed to discover. Because if they discovered any more than that, then it was house arrest.
Right, yeah.
Or the rack or burning, depending on if you're Galileo or Bruno.
Imprisoned, tortured, and or killed.
Oh, so many options.
All right, so we're moving to the next chapter then?
I don't even think Tober did commentary for this.
Oh, chapter 2, yeah. Well, not
Yeah, for chapter
second
24?
But yeah, the second chapter we read.
I
No,
heard
no.
some regarding the last verse.
Regarding the first, yeah.
You definitely skipped to the end. Where is or who's a good little Job?
All right. Well, you know what?
Who's a good little Job?
If he's not here, he's not here. You know.
Oh.
Okay, verse 1. No.
Honestly, chapter 25 is so short that like we could probably just read it, and if honestly, if he just like, can add it on to whatever commentary he's doing, it's not going to be a big deal.
I'll just do
Bildad?
2 together.
No.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
there he
true.
is.
It's really tiny.
It
Oh,
is a very
look who it
tiny
is.
chapter.
Whew.
We can just read Bildad.
We were about to
Wait.
go to the next chapter.
Wait, I just had a call from my supervisor from my master's. I'm almost
Oh.
done, and he told me now that we need to add stuff, develop stuff. But he said that tomorrow he'll ask for people to check the thesis. But I hope that I will finish this at the end of the month, and then finally I have my master's. Maybe. I hope.
And I will be very proud of you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so where were we? Yes, 24. On verse 1, Hartley comments, quote, Job opens his bold speech against the simplistic teaching about retribution offered by the friends with a caustic question about God's failure to requite flagrant violations of the law. Although times, in Hebrew itim, i.e. set times for assaying earthly events, are not hidden from Shaddai, those who know him, Yodav, i.e. those who serve him faithfully, never see his days, i.e. the days of accountability when God judges a person's deed. This question has a double prick. On the one hand, the wicked take advantage of the lack of times of judgment to pursue their evil designs unhindered. On the other hand, the righteous endure hardship, hopeful of God's rectifying justice, but without ever being rewarded by God for their faithful perseverance. Consequently, God's administration of justice seems sporadic, partial, and inconsistent.
Yeah, that would be accurate.
On verses 2 through 4, Habel notes that Job argues that society is filled with numerous cases of exploitation of the poor and needy, typical of the ancient world, such as removal of landmarks, carrying off flocks and pasturing them as one's own, the appropriation of possessions belonging to the widow and orphan, and taking essential assets like an ox or an ass as a pledge. He writes that when the property and possession of the poor are appropriated, they are compelled to leave the mainstream of society and eke out an existence in the hidden corners of their community.
I think that's
The-
probably eke out.
Eke out, I don't know. I
Because, you
don't
know, the rules of English.
Yes.
Robin Blossom, XC20C, says, I think I understand what is being said. When I posed the question, I was saying that with the thought in mind that there are many religions which have similar or the same stories.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So what you were saying with the other question was like how could they think there was like something truly special if they look at like the surrounding societies? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that some of it is like an expansion on that stuff, right? So they're specializing these stories, these motifs for themselves, but yeah, it's by itself, it's not like there's not like that much new stuff, right? They could have a different interpretation of something, for example, but a lot of it is based on stuff that's older, and that is just to be expected, right? I think
Yeah.
in their own way, it's standing on the shoulders of giants, but the giants in this case are just like the surrounding societies, like if you want to call
I mean,
it that.
when we are trying to explain a concept, very often we draw parallels from modern literature. There was a while where we were making, Lord of the Rings analogies for everything, a while where we were making Harry Potter analogies for everything. Not because we necessarily always loved everything about those series, though some of us do, but because they were it's a common narrative, a common theme. You can discuss that with people, even if they don't know your own friend group or something. Fiction gives us a way to translate our ideas in the memes of our time. And that's, they're using the memes of their time, which is fine. It's perfectly good.
I haven't finished my commentary, by the way,
He said it.
because you had to correct the ik part, of course.
And
Brian.
also, it's caustic, not caustic.
I've been waiting weeks for you to say that again, because you don't say that often enough. I
No,
need to
because people haven't interrupted me.
be able to use this.
Well, people have been very obedient until this point.
It's not our fault. You
It is.
said.
And just by
It is.
saying that, everything will go wrong for you from here on in.
I guess. So the way from which the needy are forced may refer to public highways, but it also seems to carry the connotation of right or portion in life. Yeah. On verse 5, Clines notes that the onager, in Hebrew pere, was found in the wilderness of the ancient Near East in antiquity. In the Bible, the onager is noted for its untamability, as we see in 11:12, its independence and solitariness, as we see in Genesis 16:12 and Hosea 8:9, and its lust in Jeremiah 2:24. In 39:5-8, the onager is one of the wild animals useless to humans, but described in loving detail as one of the creatures God is proud to have created. Clines writes that while this verse creates a powerful picture, it doesn't seem to fit with what follows. Quote, how can those foraging for provision in the desert be at the same time reapers in the field and gleaners in the vineyard? In verse 6.
Did you say foraging?
Foraging, I don't fucking know. Foraging.
Foraging is right. Yeah.
Foraging. Foraging. I don't care. Foraging.
English has rules.
No, it doesn't.
No,
No, it really
English
doesn't.
is fucking stupid. It's a dumb
No,
language.
it doesn't. So,
Yeah,
yes,
I
continue.
before you, except after C, except every time it isn't.
Yeah.
Except on
continue.
Thursdays after 12.
So he writes, quote, the key to a coherent interpretation of verses 5-11 lies in the phrase, to their work, in Hebrew, bepoalam. If they are literally scavenging for food in the wilderness, they are not doing work, however tiring and demanding their search may be. For although the noun po'al can refer to any activity or deed when it is a matter of going out, yatsa, to one's work, it is specifically one's daily work or occupation. The parallel in Psalms 104:23, quote, people go out to their work, pa'al, and to their labor until the evening, end quote, in NRSV, is very close. What we have here, therefore, is not a literal foraging in the wilderness, but a metaphorical depiction of the hard work required to earn an inadequate living as a farm laborer. It is no better, the poet says, than scavenging for roots in the steppe.
Damn. I mean, he's not wrong, but damn.
In the steppe, sorry, it's a steppe, not steep.
Yeah.
Okay, on 9. This verse is seen by many commentators as a continuation of verse 3, because of the sudden switch from the victim to the culprit. Thus, several commentators like Dorm, Pope, Hartley, Tur-Sinai, and NEB place this verse after verse 3. Habel, however, writes that while the change may favor logical consistency, it destroys the continued poetic interplay of oppressor and oppressed, and suggested to retain its place in the Masoretic text. Clines notes that some suggested placing it after verse 4, like Stran, or verse 12, like Kisane, or omit it altogether as repetitious, according to Budd, Horscher, Stevenson, and Fowell.
Also, I'd like to mention that the word orphan, or yatom in Hebrew, refers to someone who doesn't have a father rather than someone who both their parents are dead, for example. So this is a good example because you snatch the orphan from its mother.
The widow
Doesn't
and the
really-
fatherless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think would be a better phrasing because, yeah, obviously, I mean, the mother may still be alive, but she can't provide in this society where she's not allowed
I
to
mean,
do anything.
yeah, I don't know if in English, like, orphan originally referred to fatherless as opposed to both parents or whatever.
No, I mean, I think it didn't. I don't
Oh.
know, but I we could look that up.
Okay, on 10 and 11, Hartley notes that Job shifts from the miserable conditions of the poor to the harsh working practices afforded day laborers. They are so poor that they have to work without protective clothing. The conditions under which they must work compound their misery and are forced to work with the very essential that their bodies cry out for. For example, some have to carry sheaves all day long, yet are forbidden to eat any of the grain. The beasts of the burden have to pull the heavy millstone that press out the olive oil, etc. Hartley writes that sapping a worker's strength without giving him any nourishment or allowing him a share in the joy of his toil is the height of inhumane labor practices, as we see in James 5:1-6. Landlords were supposed to let their workers share in the results of their labor. Verses 10 and 11 also mention grain, wine, and oil, the three staples which represent the products of the soil which God gives to sustain life, as we see in Hosea 2:11 and 24, which is 9 and 22. On verse 12, but God charges no one with wrongdoing. Habel comments, quote, verse 12c is at the pivot point between the miseries and misdeeds of the preceding units, as we see in verses 2-12, and the portrait of the flagrant evildoers which follows in verses 13-17. This transition line keeps the audience in touch with the underlying question posed in the opening verse. God is the touted champion of the poor in Deuteronomy 10:18, but he seems indifferent to their needs. Because it does not intervene immediately to punish the wicked, it seems as if it considers nothing amiss. The noun tipla, wrong, reproach, or unseemliness, was used of Job's attitude in the prologue when he did not attribute wrong to God or express contempt for God's string of afflictions in 122. With a typical ironic twist, the poet now has God considering that nothing is wrong, or quote unquote, or contemptuous about a world where downtrodden victims continue to be exploited by ruthless oppressors. The impression is clearly given that the downtrodden are the innocent ones, and that God has delayed intervening to redress the ills of society or reveal a definite time for future judgment. Compare verse 1.
Yeah, the time for judgment very much gave I know in certain cultures at times there would be like a time where the judges would be open, the king's court would be open, people could come and plead their case. And that very much clearly God is not offering that service. But yeah, it's the cruelty of a God who actually understands what's going on and insists on being told what a good and just and virtuous character he is, well, gestures to everything, is happening. Yeah, that's, I know Job has to be the good guy, so he can't use terms like that's bullshit, but that's bullshit.
On verse 13, those who rebel against the light. In Hebrew, modei ol, literally light rebels. This phrase is unique in the Old Testament, but in Job, light is either the symbol of light, as we see in 3 verses 16 and 20, 33-30, the sign of success and divine favor, as we see in 22-28, or to quote, the orderly world that belongs to the day, a world governed by God's righteous rule, end quote, according to Habel. Rashi took the light rebels to be the flood generation who rebelled because of light. Because of the rain, because it would ascend from the earth, they needed nothing. Targum takes the light to be the law, in Aramaic, oraita. Clines notes that this is the only instance where rebel, marad, is used metaphorically. elsewhere referring to rebellion against a king, as we see Genesis 14:4, 2 Kings 18:7, or against God in Numbers 14:9 and Josiah 22:16.
The accusation
Yeah,
there
sorry,
does
not just-
appear to be based in the law. Do not tie the worker's hands who winnows the grain or muzzle the ox that, trods out the grain. The idea that, the worker should partake in what they are producing, that is one of the better laws in the Torah. And explicitly, this seems to be he's directly saying that they're not doing that they're doing the opposite of that.
I think I took the reference to be what is Jos? Oh, I forgot what JOS means in the Bible. Joshua, yeah, just Joshua, yeah. I forgot the JOSH. Okay. So against God and a breach of authority. Thus, the implication is both that light has the right to rule the lives of humans, and that wrongdoers' opposition to it is ultimately futile. He notes that Tur-Sinai had the idea of an allusion here to a myth of a primeval underworld king rising up against light as a murderer, but his idea has gained no following. Though maybe Simone likes this idea because it's Tur-Sinai after all. She loves him.
Shades
Okay.
of the magic flute.
Okay, on 14 through 17, Habel comments, quote, "The identification of these criminals with the darkness is emphasized by a sequence of associations that they have with the night. The murderer and the burglar operate at night. The adulterers, or perhaps rapists, use the dark as a cover for their ugly sins. Not only do adulterers believe they can hide behind the shadows of night, but they disguise their faces so that their true identity does not come to light. During the day, they do not lead normal lives or oppress the poor like the wealthy landlords described above, but they stay indoors away from the light. Their orientation to the world is the reverse of normal citizens. Since they do not know the light, they view the morning as alien to them. The dawn is their darkness and represents death rather than life. The dawn would expose their deeds for what they are. In the sapiential tradition of Proverbs, quote, the way of the righteous, end quote, leads to life, quote, like morning light, end quote. But the, quote, ways of the wicked are like darkness at night, end quote, in Proverbs 4, 10 through 19. In his response to Job, Yahweh emphasizes that the role of the morning is to shed light across the earth, so as to expose the wicked and place constraints on their oppression, in 38:12-15. The polarity between light as the symbol of the orderly world of the day and darkness as the shroud of night beneath which the wicked operate is expressed with artistic beauty in an Egyptian hymn to the sun god Aton, in Anat 370. To rebel against the light is to oppose God and is designed for the world. And finally, 18 through 24, commentators note that this text is extremely difficult. Hartley notes that the section is understood as describing the certain downfall of the wicked, and hence it contradicts the above complaint. It supports the doctrine of retribution rather than challenging it. Since it agrees with the teaching of the Friends, many scholars relocate this passage, making it either Bildad's or Sophal's third speech. Thus, Clines notes that in the Hebrew text as it stands, Sophal has no speech at all in the third cycle, and there are good grounds for assigning 27th, 7 through 10, and 13 to 23 to one of the Friends, rather than to Job. He writes that verses 18 through 25 belong with that passage, and helps to restore Sophal's missing speech. Habel writes that verses 18 through 24 both continues the themes announced by Sophal in chapter 20, and answers counterclaims of Job in chapter 21, whether or not the speech was originally intended to be attributed to Sophal. He writes that the fact that this speech is out of place in the sequence of the Friend's speech explains why Sophal's name was deleted. Hartley, however, argues that the style of these verses accords with chapter 24 than Bildad's or Sophal's speeches. He writes that it is not correct to assume that because Job questions God's method of governing, he puts aside all belief in retributive punishment. Quote, while seriously considering the exceptions to the rule, he does not throw out everything he has believed about justice. Since Job wants God to execute his justice against these wicked as proof that he will act justly in his own favor, he utters a series of curses against the lawless. As the imprecatory style of verse 18 suggests, according to Anderson. Cautiously accepting this interpretation, one can retain these verses as part of Job's speech. As Anderson says in defending their place here, quote, his position is more balanced but more baffled, end quote.
Guess I could see that. I mean, it's I can certainly see how that portion of the speech might absolutely have gone to one of Job's friends. I noticed the inconsistency in it too, but I guess it's something we can only speculate on.
Yeah, there are a few parts in the upcoming chapters that are like that, where like we're not entirely sure who they're supposed to go to. So like
Yeah.
if you read different translations or different commentaries, you're gonna get disagreement on who is saying what and when.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I mean, it very much seems to be defending the position that God is just, and that's not what Job is saying. He's not being just right now. Yeah, it's I don't know. I shade towards thinking it was probably supposed to be attributed to someone else, but that's just my
Yeah, especially with the length of the
vibes,
next.
as you would. It's yeah, I could very well be wrong about that. I'll take
Okay.
on the Christian channel for today.
Yes, the Christians, of course. So I basically wrote everyone in chapter 24. So the second half of Job's speech, in which he describes the prevalence of wickedness on earth, is not, according to the fathers, an acknowledgement of the fact that God allows evil to prevail. On the contrary, it demonstrates that God observes every human action and will strike the wicked with severe punishment. Job thoroughly understands human wickedness and condemns it with all his scorn. The fact that the wicked are prosperous on earth, while the righteous Job is in affliction, only demonstrates that God has no solicitude for the evildoers, whereas he visits his beloved children and corrects them through suffering, according to Olympiodorus.
Oh, fuck, not that
What a
one again.
phrase.
Oh my
What
God.
a phrase.
We're suffering because God corrects us, and that means we're right.
And he does it because he loves you.
Yeah, the whole idea that God brings additional suffering to his favorites is absolutely one of those narratives that goes through the history of faith. It's one of the justifications. I have literally had people try and convince me that I was going through atrocious suffering because I must be special to God.
Mm.
I don't want to be special to God. He sounds like an asshole.
Sounds like Coke.
I don't like Coke.
Yes,
No,
I'm done here.
not
It's
yours.
like being
like,
special to
I think.
Epstein.
Oh God. Oh fuck. Yeah. Oh my God.
So we're ready to move on to the next chapter.
Yes.
Okay. And let me jump over here. 25. Then Bildad Shuhite answered. I love how I can make fun of Tomer for his English, and then I get to read these names.
The Shuhite.
The Shuhite, yes.
It's perfect irony.
Dominion and fear are with God. He makes peace in his high heaven. Is there any number to his armies? Upon whom does his light not rise? How then can a mortal be righteous before God? How can one born of a woman be pure? Even if the moon is not bright and the stars are not pure in his sight, how much less a mortal who is a maggot and a human being who is a worm.
Yeah, so this is all
Oh, look,
the
even
Well, aren't you
even,
just a ray of
even
fucking
Job's
sunshine?
friends don't like maggots.
So this speech by Bildad is very short, suspiciously short. Which, so this is in contrast with all the previous speeches, and like the Job's final speech is the longest of this. This is the chapters 26 and 31. So
Maybe that's the reason why he's called the Shuhite,
no,
because he was very short. He was a Shuhite.
I'm done.
Wow. Terrible. We have all quit the show.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was a
Anyway.
terrible pun. If I could reach you, I would hit you with a rolled up newspaper.
Anyway, so the most common, so people think that some parts of Job's speech in chapters 26 to 31 were actually part of Bildad's speech. The most common of which is 26, 5 to 14, according to Dorm, Terrian, Pope, Gordis, Habel, Newsom, etc. Habel explains that 26, 5 to 14 seems inconsistent with Job's earlier speeches, in which the tone is more positive and hymnic materials are employed to emphasize the transcendent mystery and orderly design of the universe. Thus, he writes, it is more reasonable to assume that 26, 5 to 14 belonged to one of the friends, presumably Bildad, whose brief speech preceded. Habel suggested 25, 2 through 6 plus 27, 13 to 23, arguing that the wording of 27, 13 through 23 is close to the Comforter's type of discussion than to Job's. Moreover, 27, 13 to 23 offers a direct rebuttal to the ideas Job was struggling with in chapter 24. He writes, however, that the connection between these two portions is rough, and it may be assumed that other lines have been lost after verse 6, and both before and after 27, 13 to 23. Other suggestions include 25, 2 through 14 plus, is it 26? I need to check. What did I do here? 27, 2 through 14 plus 25, 2 through 6, according to Stan. 26, 2 through 4 plus 25, 2 through 6 plus 26, 5 through 14 by Steinman. 26, 5 through 14 plus 25, 2 through 6 by Lefebvre. Clines notes that some scholars like Forer, Anderson, and Good retain 25, 2 through 6 as Bildad's speech, with Anderson arguing that Bildad's brevity is a deliberate sign on the part of the author that the friends have begun to run out of steam. Although Anderson concluded that from the variety of these suggestions that none of them is convincing, Klein concludes, quote, better to start again when one's head is clear and recognize that there is something of a consensus about what belongs to Bildad, but no consensus about what order the verses should be in, and that it doesn't matter.
You don't know what order the verses should be in, and it doesn't matter? Well,
honestly,
it does to me, because I'm noticing that verse 5 here is the first verse in Bob Seger's Come to Papa. If the sun ain't shining bright, and the moon won't shine for you tonight. If the stars in the sky gone away, and you feeling real low down today. That's the same lyrics, isn't it? Same verse.
Are you saying that Bob Seger wrote these sections?
You have to speak up.
Are you saying that Bob Seger wrote these sections?
I don't think he's that old.
Or maybe they should all be attributed to Bob Seger.
There you go.
Yes, so Bob Seger speaks to Job.
Yeah. Yeah, but like this is it's very bizarre, like to have this short of a speech, and then Job goes on a temper tantrum.
Yeah. So he hardly said anything.
Chapters.
5 verses. Over 5 chapters, the next
5
bit?
chapters, 26 to 31. Yes, 27
wow.
to 26 to 31. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We got any Christ bros for this chapter?
Of course we do. What did you expect? Okay, so I'll start with verse 2. Some traditionals took the dominion and awe to be divine beings. Rashi took dominion to be Michael and awe to be Gabriel. He also writes that when the constellations ascend, each one thinks, I will ascend first. And because he does not see what is before him, he is not envious. One Targum variation reads, Michael at his right, and he is of fire, and Gabriel at his left, and he is of water. And his holy creatures are composed of fire and water. And in his dominion and fearfulness he makes peace in his heaven of heavens. End quote.
Wait, why does it end with I did not hear this?
What?
Rashi.
Let me just check.
Oh, okay. So he's like, the first one I have heard. The second one, I did not hear this. That's a bit weird thing to say about something you just wrote down, but yeah.
Wait. No, I think it reads, so I have heard in both of these. I mean, this in my version of Mikot Gedorot.
Yeah, the English translation might be wrong. Yeah.
Kach shamati, yes. Okay. Yeah, that's what he writes. Kach shamati.
Yeah, but the second one says I did not hear this.
Yeah,
Unless
I did
my
hear
English
this though.
translation is wrong.
Yeah, it is wrong.
Okay.
So yeah. So Kimchi suggested that the dominion refers to the great luminaries, i.e. the sun and moon, because God governed them in Genesis 1:18, and that he made peace between the angels that are his heights. Clines notes that pachad, fear, can mean object of dread, as we see in Genesis 31:42, Psalms 31:12, which is 11, but this is not the case here, since the fear is with God. Thus, the phrase must form a deities, i.e., it has the sense of, quote, a dominion of dread, a rule that inspires fear, end quote. Habel writes that the peace described here may refer to the quelling of conflicts between heavenly powers, which rebelled against God. Compare Psalms 82:1, Isaiah 14:12-14, 24:21, and 22. Though it probably refers more generally to the celestial order established in heaven. He also notes that in later apocalyptic thought, the belief developed that earthly conflicts had corresponding celestial protagonists, as we see in Daniel 10:13 and 20 and 21. On verse 3, on whom does his light not rise? Hebrew for his light is Orehu. Is it? Wait. Orig, yes. This meaning is attested in Vulgate and Targum and favored by most traditionals. Kimchi takes it to be the sun, Rashbam his cloud, as in 37:11, scatters his lightning clouds, Anan Oro. Hartley suggested that the light symbolizes warmth, joy, and life. Habel writes that the light of God's presence is a partial disclosure of his presence when he appears in theophanic glory with his celestial forces, as we see in Psalms 104, 1-4. Clines writes that the light represents, quote, the inescapability of creatures from the dread rule of their creator, the world being a giant panopticon and its denizens being supervised by the innumerable company of God's heavenly troops, end quote. Likewise, Hakham writes that God's light reaches everywhere, and God discovers everything, even about those creatures who live in darkness. Tur-Sinai, however, notes that the all here is said to prevail over all light, including the luminaries in the sky, the sun, the moon, and the stars. He takes all here to mean curse or condemnation, from arar, to curse, and renders, and upon whom doth his blame not prevail. On verse 4, the first column of this verse is exactly Job's in 9:2. And the second takes the language of Eliphaz in 15:14. Job's mind in 9:2, however, is different from what's described here, where he speaks about the impossibility of gaining vindication from God. Habel writes that Bildad repeats the tradition that no mortal can be naturally pure or be found legally without guilt before God. Even in God's heavenly court, God's holy ones are found guilty, as we see in Psalms 82:1. Eliphaz previously stressed that humans are, quote, born of woman, end quote, rather than heaven-born in 1514, and thus are subject to the corruption linked with human birth processes. They also have an innate propensity to do evil in 1516.
I'm a little confused. Yeah, I'm a little, because if you're born a woman, that's not being heaven born. I think it just, maybe they're going out through the inn door. Maybe that's the problem, because when you go in, then it's heaven.
Oh, well, you know, I mean, there's the religious aversion to feminine flesh is the, I mean, it's very obviously just as much about the fascination and the fear of another power that, you know, it's honestly, if you read 1984 and what she says about sex and how all this marching is just sex gone wrong, and the same method of control for religion, fear women, fear sex, even if you engage in it, you know, dehumanize, make it about power, make it about rage, make it about they're just the constant desire to feel disgusted with yourself so that you can appeal to the religion to cleanse you. And this idea that God is so perfect that we are all guilty in comparison is, I mean, it's absolutely been a cornerstone of Christian theology from
I
day
get that.
one.
There's something that Bugs Bunny used to say that I really resonated with. That I'll do it, but I'll probably hate myself in the morning.
Oh,
Satan 616 says, if no one born of a woman is right, doesn't that include Jesus?
yeah, he was actually born, whereas I was from my mother's womb untimely ripped, and therefore, according to scripture, I am pure and hallowed. You may worship me now.
Okay, so in verse 5, Hartley comments, quote, Bildad defends God's way of governing the world by saying that nothing except God himself is pure or flawless. The moon, which shines brightly enough in the Middle East for a traveler to find his way across the steppe at night, is not bright in God's judgment, and the stars are not pure, zakak, in his sight. Even though the moon and the stars, members of God's heavenly army, appear so bright to mankind, they have no innate purity that gives them any position with God. They too must serve him out of contrition and unworthiness. If this is true of these marvelous heavenly bodies, how much more is it true of mankind?
Yes, this degradation kink has gotten way out of hand.
I was just getting into it.
Oh my goodness.
And somebody
I
in the
just-
comments said, knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door.
And finally, on verse 6, Clines writes that Bildad here is brutal, quote-unquote, claiming that humans are ethically unclean compared to God's maggots and worms, both literally unclean and associated with the dead. Compare Hartley, they have the smell of death about them. Clines notes that in the Old Testament, maggots, in Hebrew rimah, the larvae of various beetles, are always denizens of the grave, as we see in 17:14, 21:26, 24:20, and Isaiah 14:11, or at least agents of decay in Exodus 16:24. The worms, tola'ah, appear with the same connotation in Isaiah 14:11, 66:24, though in other places they connote insignificance, as we see in Psalms 22:6, which is 7, and Isaiah 41:14. Here, the association with maggots suggests that humanity is being labeled as positively unclean, not merely insignificant. Habel adds, quote, Mortals are not merely weak, sinful creatures. They are at the bottom of the order of creation. They belong to Sheol, not heaven. They are not a little less than the angels or God, as we see in Psalms 8:6, which is 5, but little more than maggots. The possibility of mortals like Job standing before God and being declared guiltless is preposterous.
Yeah, that's religion for you. Everything you are is just vile and corrupt, and the mere fact of your existence is enough to make God puke. But he loves you.
Everything God created is tainted.
He really does suck, doesn't he?
Oh, now the Christians. Yes, let's see. So, though Bildad rightly argues that all things are under the total control and power of God, according to Ephraim, he wrongly argues that Job sinned because he had dared to call God to judgment, according to Julian. Bildad's reply is severely criticized by the fathers, who read in his words new groundless accusations and wrong opinions, according to Julian and Chrysostom. In claiming that there is no respite for robbers, Bildad says the opposite of what happens, because there is respite, according to Chrysostom. That's it.
All right. So for chapter 26, Tomer,
Yes.
how about you read it?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Dream comes true at last.
Yeah. Read chapter 26 because I'm gonna have a lot to say on this chapter.
I only have 6 pages of commentary in this.
I have more. I have 12. Yeah.
I just need to palate my mouth with watery water. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think there are comments. If I see.
I think we read them.
Yeah. Satan. Did you read that?
Yeah, we did. We read them.
Okay. So, I'll put this on center. I'm reading JPS version. Then Job said in reply, "You would help without having the strength. You would deliver with arms that have no power. Without having the wisdom, you offer advice and freely give your counsel. To whom have you addressed words? Whose breath issued from you? The shades tremble beneath the waters and their denizens. Sheol is naked before him. Abaddon has no cover. He it is who stretched out Saphon over chaos, who suspended earth over emptiness. He wrapped up the waters in his clouds, yet no cloud burst under their weight. He shuts off the view of his throne, spreading his cloud over it. He drew a boundary on the surface of the waters, at the extreme where light and darkness meet. The pillars of heaven tremble, astounding at his blast. By his power he stilled the sea, by his skill he struck down Rahab. By his wind the heavens were calmed, his hand pierced the elusive serpent. These are but glimpses of his rule, the mere whisper that we perceive of him. Who can absorb the thunder of his mighty deeds?" You're muted, Aaron. Aaron, you are muted.
Yeah, who can absorb the thunder, right? Certainly not my dog. He just runs in the bathroom and hides.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Poor baby.
You
He
should have
just
seen
needs cuddles.
January 1st, New Year's. They did this huge fireworks show downtown and everywhere, and everybody's shooting off their guns. I mean, it sounds like a war zone. Everybody's shooting off their guns at once. And our dogs just like basically shit themselves.
I will never understand American gun culture.
So, I'm going to start with this. First, I'm going to talk about some, just some preliminary stuff, and then I'll get into my larger commentary. So, firstly, when we're looking at, especially the second half of this, I've already talked about, for example, let's just go verse by verse here. So when it comes to especially everything, verse 5 and following that, there's a lot. There's just a lot. When we're talking about, and I know that you guys probably remember this from previous discussions. So yeah, the shades below tremble, the waters and their inhabitants. We have already talked about how the waters have their own. What was it? The Rephaim, right? as being. Yeah, we'll talk about we can call them people for now. They were later to be giants, but still close enough. Anthropomorphic. So there is reference there to their own watery abode. There is always going to be some confusion over, I think, verse 6. But I think they're just two different ways of saying the same thing. Both, verse 6a and b. So Sheol is naked before God. Abaddon has no covering. And then if we just jump around a little bit more, there is, for example, by his power he stilled the sea. By his understanding he struck down Rahab. Rahab was just another name for the sea in what was it, Canaanite literature, I think. They're and you can see more of this in the next verse too. By his wind the heavens were made fair, his hand pierced the fleeing serpent. This is a reference to the chaos comp, which is essentially the battle between usually a high god and a dragon monster. And there have been quite a few books written about this, and sometimes they are creative in nature, where the actual battle results in creation, and other times they're not. So this one itself is not necessarily indicative of some creative power. We've talked about if you want to see more about, for example, he has described a circle on the face of the waters, or the pillars of heaven trembling. I go into that in my video on is the flat earth biblical, and that's just where I talk about the cosmology of the Bible. And
Drawing a circle on the face of the waters does seem like a flat earth concept.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and stretching out the Zephon over the void.
That's the bulk of what I'm going to be talking about. So Zephon is the so it can also mean north, but if we translate it as north, what the hell does it mean to stretch out the north over anything? So this is probably not a reference to north.
It was a prophecy for the Viking raids.
Yeah, you know what? They're calling in Thor.
Sure.
Jesus said he conquered sin. Thor said he conquered the frost giants, and I don't see any frost giants. So
I'm sorry to interrupt with that silliness. Please continue.
So this is what I wrote my my capstone paper on, this specific verse, Job 26:7. So now that wouldn't make much sense to talk about stretching out the north over the void, but Zephon was in fact a mountain, and it was the mountain of Baal. But it is it's so weird, because I think that in this verse, I'm gonna just give you my conclusion right away here. In this verse, I think Zephon is just meant to be another word for heaven. There's already been this conflation between mountains and heavens before. We've seen that in for example, one of the differences between Psalm 18 and 2 Samuel 22, where they change out the pillars of the foundations of the mountains and the foundations of the heavens. So there's already a conflation between those. But I think that the verb there, nata, right, the stretching, is very significant. And I'm just going to read a few things here, a few selections. And this is from me, by the way, so these are my own words. As long as has been noted by scholars, biblical cosmology is very similar to the cosmologies of the surrounding ancient Near East. There are very few differences between these. When the differences appear, they are minute and hardly change the overall view of the cosmos gained from extant sources. One of the most critical points of contact for this study is the use of the verb nata in describing the construction of the universe. Job refers references the stretching of Zaphon, which may seem confusing. As has been pointed out by Wyatt, this imagery would not quite make sense. If we interpret Zaphon as north, what does it mean to stretch out the north? If we interpret it as the cosmic mountain identified today as Jebel Akra, what does it mean to? And I should note this is why, because the mountain Zaphon is to the north of the region. That's why it came to mean north. Is because the mountain was the thing to the north. So what does it mean to stretch out a mountain over tohu? And I'll get to that. The construction tohu vabohu is incredibly important. I'll get to that too. I'll get to it. So, however, if we consider other cosmological contexts where this verb appears, a much clearer picture emerges. In Isaiah 40:22 and 44:24, we are told that God is the one who stretched out the heavens. Furthermore, in Job 9:8, we are also told that God stretches out the heavens. There are multiple reasons for the stretching imagery when the biblical authors speak of the creation of the heavens. Firstly, there is a close connection to the universe and tent imagery. Since there was an early earthly tabernacle to worship God, there was also a heavenly tent, which was pictured to be the whole universe. It is no surprise that nata is the verb that, of course, again means stretching, is the verb used when setting up earthly tents. Secondly, there is an inherited tradition going back to the Enuma Elish that describes the creation of the heavens in terms of a stretching out. The phrase is common in late texts, post-exilic, so the likelihood of this having been taken from a Babylonian milieu is increased. In the Enuma Elish, before the naming of the heaven and earth, there was a mixing of the two waters of Tiamat and Apsu. Tiamat represents the chaotic salt waters and Apsu the fresh water. Tiamat revolts against Apsu, and Marduk is called to defeat her. In his victory, Marduk divided Tiamat in two. He uses her corpse to create the cosmic regions. And this is from the Enuma Elish here. He split her in half like a dried fish. Then he set, I know it's funny, then he set half of her up and made the heavens as a roof. He stretched out a skin and assigned a guard. He ordered them not to let the waters escape. Significantly, Marduk stretches out her skin to create the heavens. And we've talked about, we'll talk about some of this stuff later too, but you also have the guarding of the waters so that they don't come out, right? And I go into more detail in my video.
The similarity of heavens to a tent, like if you've ever gone camping, there's stretching involved, but it's very reflective of an ancient transitory lifestyle, shall we say.
Yeah. A secondary link to the ancient Near Eastern literature is found in the theophanic imagery in Job 26. During a theophany, an appearance of a deity, heavy destruction. That's what the theophany is, appearance of a deity. Heavy destruction comes upon the land in a variety of ways. Job 26 is not a proper theophany, but Job certainly describes one of these events in the same terms. For example, the shades below tremble, the waters and their inhabitants, the pillars of heaven tremble as well. The author even calls back to an ancient chaos conf when God defeated the chaos dragon, the sea, before establishing the universe. Quote, by his power, he stilled the sea, Yam. By his understanding, he struck down Rahab. By his wind, the heavens were made fair. His hand pierced the fleeing serpent. Interestingly, the author even uses storm imagery that is associated with deities like Hadad and Teshub, who fight off the primordial monster when he says, quote, God binds up the waters in his thick clouds, and the cloud is not torn open by them. So that's number one on just an explanation of Zaphon, or I should say, an explanation of stretching. So then we should talk a little bit about Zaphon. So this language is ubiquitous among storm gods of the ancient Near East. We see a clear influence from the Canaanite background of Job 26 when we consider the usage of the word Zaphon. This was the cosmic mountain in Canaanite mythology. El, the high god of the Canaanites, does not seem to have been associated with this mountain. Instead, the designation El Safon was a deification of the mountain itself. Deification of a mountain was a surprisingly common practice in the ancient Near East. This does not seem to be the meaning of Safon in Job 26:7. However, Job comes to us at a much later date, perhaps the Persian period, so any deification of these mountains would have been forgotten and fallen out of common understanding for the Israelites. However, Safon itself became the word for north, and I already explained why. But yeah, this understanding persisted when Septuagint translations began around 300 BCE. The Septuagint version of Job 26:7 renders Safon as Borean, which just means north. Let's see. So yeah, having it as north doesn't make much sense, but this verse is much more likely to be referring to the cosmic mountain. Safon served as Baal's royal throne. As Baal's temple, it served as a cosmic center and meeting place of the gods. Unsurprisingly, since Baal was a storm god, this mountain was also the location of many storms that took place, quote, in the midst of the mountain. Divine mountains were common for high gods. In a hymn to Enlil is said to, quote, set up his dais in the mountain mist, rotates it in heaven like a rainbow, and makes it roam about like a floating cloud. So I have some more stuff on cosmology here, but I am going to skip that and hop to the next portion here. Yeah, sorry, this is gonna take me.
Sorry, this mountain to the north, which it's a very normal thing to do. Find a highly visible thing and use that as your compass point. If you live in Toronto, the needle is to the south. The CN Tower, that is to the south. It's not technically exactly south, but it's close enough. All your directions are given on that basis. But was this visualized as like the tent pole around which the tent was stretched? Is that what sort of the visual I'm getting from this mountain?
Well, the mountain, it's kind of it would be like this big centerpiece, right? Where the gods would meet, like both in the middle of the heavens and on the top of the mountain. That is one way.
Right, it's a touch point.
Right, yeah.
Between the heavens and the earth.
Yeah. That is one way to view it, but it does change from place to place, time to time.
Okay.
But that's a very it's a good summary of that. So I also wanted to talk about tohu vabohu. So in Genesis, for example, you see that sometimes it's translated as like welter and waste. Sometimes it can be translated as like nothing. What was it, like nothing and nothingness, something like that. So I'll get to that in a second here. So here, at least like in the NRSV, for example, they are translated as the void and nothing. So yeah, tohu has been variously translated over the years, and most of the translations are heavily dependent on the context, more so than other words. Famously, in the KJV, Genesis 1:2 translates tohu vabohu as without form and void. Job 26:7 often translates al tohu as over the void. Even the NRSV UE offers no clarity. Yeah, so this word appears in some other contexts as well. For example, in Isaiah 34, he shall stretch the line of confusion, tohu, and the plummet of chaos, bohu, over it. Translations like chaos, waste, nothingness, and futile reign supreme. Ironically, the confusion over the term tohu has led to a varied understanding of the term in a plethora of contexts. If we examine texts from the ancient Near East as they describe the concept of emptiness, we find a meaning that I believe is much closer to the original meaning of the Hebrew. Among these texts, emptiness is often used to describe total ruin. For example, in an account of an account, I was trying to figure out how to pronounce this name. For example, in an account of Camosus' destruction of Hyksos after describing the many goods that have been taken from their cities. The author says, "I seized them all. I did not leave a thing of Avaris," which is the capital city of the Hyksos in Egypt, because it is empty, with the Asiatic vanished, which was what they called the Hyksos. In a lament over the destruction of Sumer, the language of emptiness is strikingly similar to that of Isaiah 34. The river has become empty, and water no longer flows through it. Miller argues that Tohu can be connected to Tehom, as they appear paralleled in Genesis 1:2. Tehom, which, at least in my paper, I mentioned it before, was the world surrounding ocean. However, for many generations, Tehom, usually translated as the deep, was believed to be an Israelite version of the chaos comp monster that is slain during creation. This seems unlikely, as it is Yam, the terrestrial sea, that is always defeated or trampled, not Tehom. Tsumura also sees a connection here to the sea in some sense. He points out that Tohu is paralleled with Yam this is from a Canaanite text here. "My appetite is the appetite of the lion in the wasteland, as the desire of the shark is in the sea." While there are some common themes between Tohu and concepts of the waters, whether they be earthly or cosmic, Samura concludes that Tehom is probably not directly derived from Tiamat. While this may be etymologically true, there does seem to be some common root. The origins of this root are unclear, but the understanding of Tohu as being a primordial chaotic force may not be far off from the mark. In Jeremiah 4, for example, it's a prophetic oracle against Judah if they maintain their ways. It's meant to be read as a potential future. The destruction of the earth and the temple are envisaged in almost primordial terms. The mountains will shake, the gardens will become wilderness, and cities will be demolished. Importantly, the earth will be tohu vabohu. I looked on the earth, and it was complete chaos. Tohu vabohu. And to the heavens, and they had no light. Holiday notes the importance of this language when he states concerning Jeremiah that, quote, "He envisages a decreation of the cosmos. The world again becomes the chaos before creation began, not a retroversion, turning back the clock, but a moving ahead to a state identical with that before Yahweh's creative activity began. In the most terrible way, Endzeit ist Urzeit." So the end time is the beginning time. We should also talk a little bit about even the word earth there, because I think it carries a little bit of a different meaning. So the word Eretz can mean many things in the Bible. Usually it is understood as the corporeal earth or land we all stand on. However, there are some less common meanings that have put it into closer connection with the underworld. While Sheol has traditionally been understood as the underworld, there is an increasing consensus that Sheol refers to the grave itself. Earlier works that assume it to be the realm of the dead in a Hades-like sense were probably influenced by the Akkadian Shu'alu, which may have a shared etymology with Sheol. This was the equivalent to the realm of the dead in Assyria. This has also left some room for Eretz to take the mantle of underworld in some contexts. Some biblical texts make this understanding very clear. For example, in Exodus 15, where they're swallowed up by the earth. And it happens in Korah's rebellion as well. So I'm going to turn it back here real quick to Zaphon meaning heaven here. So even though it could refer to the mountain or to the north, I think it has a more broader meaning here as just heaven, or as the heavens. So starting in the 1970s, a few scholars began to notice the equivalency to some degree of Zaphon and the heavens. However, their work has mostly been overlooked. While there are brief references to their work and mentioned as a possibility, there is hardly any discussion on the points they have made. Robinson suggested that, quote, "holy mountains were customarily called Zaphon, and that Zion and the holy place of Ugarit were just two examples of this tendency." He goes on to argue that the recesses of Zaphon in Psalm 48:2 refers to the highest points of the holy mountain. This would imply that Zaphon would be a more generic term for heaven, and that Zion is the temple proper. Clines seems to accept this view in his commentary on Job, but devotes little time to it. Habel,
Okay, I got to jump in with a comment. The spam goes here, says, was there not also a tradition of naming mountain ranges rather than naming peaks as we do today? Was Zephon a peak or a range?
I think it would have been the peak.
There's not many tall ranges in the area. So.
Right, yeah, it's just the one big mountain, the big boy.
Yeah, if we're talking about like Mount Hermon.
A lot of people that lived in mountainous areas would have just seen the mountains as more or less continuous.
Sure.
So
yeah.
they wouldn't have referred to a range because they didn't do that much travel, most of them. They'd only be interested in, they would only be naming the peaks.
Yeah, and the biggest peaks, the ones that were like, okay, that one is a landmark we can use to navigate by.
Sure, yeah. Habel makes the case for why Zaphon would mean heaven, and I happen to agree with his position wholeheartedly. I mentioned the importance of the stretching imagery above. The significance here is that in Job 26:7, it is Zaphon that is being stretched out. Cosmologically speaking, this language is only ever applied to the heavens themselves. The pairing of the earth in verse 7b seems to be a common Deutero-Isianic motif that couples the two during creation. Notice that the earth is always laid and the heavens are stretched. Habel concludes that Zaphon is meant to be understood as the heavens here, and says that the stretching out of the north above chaos seems to be a variant of expressing the stretching out of heaven like a tent. There are other reasons to accept the position that Zaphon should be understood as heavens here, perhaps even why we should consider Zaphon becoming a generic term for the heavens in general in later years. Now, the interesting thing is that Zaphon did not mean north in Ugarit. So the cognate just I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it would be like Sapon or something like that. Yeah, the fact that it came to mean north in Hebrew means that a specific location was associated with the word in the mind of the inhabitants. This would speak against the hypothesis of Morgenstern, who believes Zaphon was an ever-shifting term that could be used to refer to any holy mountain, which I did cover before. And I already mentioned the differences in Psalm 18 and 2 Samuel 22, how they switched out the foundations of the mountains and the foundations of heaven trembling. So the tohu stuff, I gave you guys the preliminaries for it. My conclusion would be that like the phrase tohu vabohu would mean like essentially barrenness, a barren wasteland. So yeah, I discussed the many ways tohu vabohu has been translated and understood. The translations, while imperfect, point to the correct idea. Tohu vabohu refers to a place of emptiness or primordial chaos. The close connections to Tehom have been very persuasive in reinforcing these understandings. The Septuagint translation and Aquila's version disagree but maintain the same idea. The Septuagint translates the occurrence of Tohu Vabohu in Genesis 1 as invisible and unformed, while Aquila translates emptiness and nothing. However confused these translations may be, I consider the findings of David Zamora to be the most helpful here. Zamora argues that Tohu Vabohu is most closely associated with barrenness, an object that ought to contain certain features that does not contain them would be considered Tohu Vabohu. The object is lacking something abstract. He demonstrates this by examining the occurrences of both Tohu alone and when it occurs with Bohu. Tohu is in parallel with desert and waste in Deuteronomy 32:10. A similar construction also occurs in Isaiah 45, 18 through 19, where Tohu is paralleled with the land of darkness. In this context, he understands Tohu as desolation. The earth in its bare state would not have trees, plants, water, etc. it is the earth in a barren state. It should also be pointed out that tohu vabohu only ever refers to land. This is crucial for understanding Job 26:7. Tohu in 26:7 would then refer to the barren state of the earth. I go into some other stuff here. I use Isaiah 34 as a proof text as well, but I'm going to skip down a little bit. So it's talking about how Eretz can be understood to the underworld as the underworld in some contexts. On the face of it, it may not seem like it needs to mean that in Job 26:7. The phrase hangs Eretz on nothing, or any variation of it, implies a physical object hanging from another. To be sure, there has been some disagreement over this. Robert Alter translates this as he stretches Zaphon over the void, hangs earth over emptiness. Clines argues for the exact opposite, saying that it is not suspend over. I would agree with Clines here. The Septuagint translators evidently would have agreed with Clines as well, because they read the verse as stretching the north toward nothing, hanging up earth upon nothing. Tomorrow notes that both Tole, which is the I'm probably saying that wrong, sorry, the hanging, and Nata require physical objects, concluding that the two verbal forms from Nata, to stretch or spread, and Tole, sorry again, correct me on that.
No, it's fine. It's good.
Okay.
Tole.
To hang or suspend seem to require concrete objects. The term tohu, which is in parallel with, quote, a place where there is nothing, belima, not with an abstract concept, nothing or nothingness, would have a concrete meaning. Hence, a translation like a desert-like place or an empty place might be suggested for tohu in this context. There's also some parallels with like desert places and like midbar. I talked a little bit about the chaos comp already. Let's see. So, conclusion here. While I have yet to find a solution that fully answers the problems with this verse, I believe I have stumbled upon an interpretation that can hold up to scrutiny. It maintains parallelism, cosmology, and a historically considerate view of language change in late biblical Hebrew. The conclusion I draw is that in this verse, Yahweh is pictured as stretching out the heavens over the barren wasteland that is the earth. This would fit in with the imagery we find in Genesis, where the earth was tohu vabohu. Since the heavens are spread over the earth, the underworld is being hung under it. In verse 7b, the earth would be called belima, pointing toward the futile state of the land. In practice, the meaning of this verse would be the following, according to my findings. He stretched out the heavens over the bare earth and hung the underworld on a worthless place. So that was my very long, and honestly, I left out quite a bit of stuff, but that was a long interpretation and commentary on 26:7. I thought when I stumbled upon that verse, I was like, what the fuck does that even mean? So I decided to write a academic paper about it.
So it definitely doesn't mean that he suspended the earth in orbit in space.
Right,
No.
definitely does not mean that. Definitely doesn't mean that. Yeah. But hopefully that was understandable to everyone. If there's something that doesn't make sense, if there's something that I did not go into enough detail explaining, please let me know. I will.
Yeah, could you
Lawrence.
please repeat
Can
what
I
you said from the first sentence to the last sentence, because
Yes,
I didn't
I could-
really follow.
I can do that. Yeah. Can you please repeat the beginning, middle, and end part again?
Lawrence, we did have a comment that it would be appropriate to link to your Bible Flat Earth video, which is so good. So that's what I did in chat.
It is. And
I
mean, that
agree
is-
because I use it a lot when talking to people who don't think that
it was the
Bible says
cosmology
that.
of the time. And I don't even mind that they use the cosmology of the time. What the hell else are they supposed to do? But yeah, when you get people trying to pretend that they knew. Oh, they really knew. Blah, 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 blah. No.
In
No,
in
they did
all
not.
in
Shut
all
up.
fairness, they already knew that the Earth was a globe by then, at least as far as I know.
Some people knew. I don't think people in this area of the world knew.
Yeah,
some parts of the
it's
Bible.
a funny thing. After it was known that the world is a globe, there were still Bible authors writing verses that depict it as flat.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it before how the Talmudic scholars argued against it.
Sorry, my
Yeah.
internet went out for a second. The last thing I heard was Peter say, Lawrence, we did have a comment that it would be appropriate to, and then it cut off.
Link your video.
Link
Flat
your
Earth.
video on the flat Earth because it was so good, and I agree because I use it a lot. I link it to people, creationists that I talk to, flat earthers that I talk to.
Oh, good.
So yeah,
Yeah, Lawrence
good-
does good documentary videos that take an awful lot of time. So
Yeah, you're telling me.
show it some love, and there's a lot of
yeah.
scholarship in there. So
Yeah, this is
That is-
my paper that I wrote was like almost like a part 2 to that video, because like in that video I kept coming back to Job 26:7. So that was
He's also
that's the
not
commentary.
too bad on the line, if I just may throw that out there.
Yeah, I did enjoy doing that. I think that there is some lag, a lot of lag actually,
Could be.
but I think there was a lot of Arn and I talking over each other in those cases because of that, which is unfortunate.
Lag does that. I've had
Yeah.
that issue several times.
So I don't know if Tomer wants to just sit back and relax, or
You know,
or if he wanted to somehow add something to what I said.
I do actually.
Oh yeah, yeah. What do you got to add?
Things.
What is
Things
other
and
verses?
stuff.
Things and stuff, yes.
Abaddon.
Yes. So I started verses 2 through 4. Habel comments, quote, Job's response to Bildad with a harsh satirical exordium. How ludicrous of Job's friend to play the savior and impart counsel when he himself is so devoid of strength and wisdom. Earlier, Job had quipped that wisdom would no doubt die with his friends in 12:2, and later announced that he could find no wise man among them in 17:10. The counsel of the friends is so irrelevant that Job wonders who they could possibly be addressing and what inspiration produced such drivel. Compare 23 and 32:8. The savior figure is supposed to be the strong party who upholds the weak in their hour of crisis. Eliphaz reminded Job that he used to play that role in 4:3 and 4, but that once he was smitten, his past piety was no longer a source of strength in 4:5 and 6. The pious pap offered by the friends is even weaker and offers Job no sustenance in verse 2. In his second speech from the whirlwind, Yahweh picks up the theme of the strong arm and challenges Job to exhibit an arm like God's as proof that Job's own right hand can save him from disaster in 49 and 14. If Bildad's power is a reflection of his doctrinal position that mortals are little more than maggots, 25:6, then his capacity to save is nil. He is indeed a man without strength, quote unquote.
Yes, how lovely.
On 5 through 14, as discussed in chapter 25, these verses are taken by many scholars to be a part of Bildad's speech. Clines writes that their purpose is to develop further the idea of God's fearful dominion in 25:2, and that Bildad responds to Job's accusation that God is irresponsible by giving hymns to God's power, and denigrating human goodness by comparison with it. Hartley, however, takes verses 5 to 12 to be part of Job's speech, noting that Job previously employed hymnic lines in praise of God's power in 9:5 to 13. He argues that, quote, since God's majesty occurs in the speeches of Job and the comforters alike, it is only the context that can indicate to which speaker these lines are most appropriate, end quote. Based on comparisons with chapter 9, he takes chapter 26 to be part of Job's speech. On verse 5, wait, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I just have chronic rhinitis and it's fucking annoying.
What'd
Okay,
you
on
say,
verse 5.
tinnitus?
Rhinitis.
Oh, okay.
I do have chronic tinnitus though, but that's a different thing. On verse 5, the dead. Hebrew Rephaim. Most traditionals take the Rephaim to be the dead. Contra Rashi, Gehinom, which weakens the creatures, and Gersonides, the inanimate objects. Hakham writes that Job refers to the spirits of the dead, who are poetically described as dwelling in the depths, beneath the waters, quote-unquote. Early translations take the Rephaim to be giants. Rashbam wrote that even the giants, like humans, are also worms and maggots, and they also die, being buried beneath the waters and the earth's inhabitants. Habel notes that two major views have developed about the identity of the Rephaim. One, the Rephaim are dead who have been deified and now possess healing or quickening powers. Two, they are a mythological and social group, headed by the god Rapi, the patron of an aristocratic warrior guild. Clines notes that in the Old Testament, the term is used for the dead in general, as we've seen Psalms 88:11, which is 10, Isaiah 26:19, and Proverbs 2:18. But in Isaiah 49, they are specified as dead kings. This is in line with the Ugaritic term, which denotes a line of dead kings and heroes. Clines writes that the mention of the Rephaim in Job means, quote, even mighty kings, now dead, remain in awe of God, end quote. On verse 6, destruction lies uncovered. Hebrew for destruction is avadon. The word may be derived from the root aleph bet daled, perish, thus meaning the destruction. Hartley notes that the name appears as Apollyon in Revelations 9:11, and there it is the name of the angel of the bottomless pit. Clines notes that Abaddon is also mentioned in 28:22, parallel with death, and in 31:12. In Psalms 88:11 and 12, which is 12 and 13, God's faithfulness is not recounted in the grave or in Abaddon, for it is the land of forgetfulness. Abaddon is also mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls. In 1QH, the Thanksgiving hymns, the rivers of Belial break through to Abaddon in 332, and in 1QM, the War Scroll, a burning fire is kindled, quote, in the dark places of the Abaddons, in the Abaddons of Sheol, end quote, in 1418.
Abaddon. He puts people in the bottomless pit. Does that make him the soul-chucking angel? You ever see like those illustrations of the fire and brimstone Christianity? You've got the soul-chucking angel just phew, off into the flames of the bottomless pit.
That's interesting.
I think
On verse,
Abaddon is
sorry.
also I think Abaddon's also like a character in Warhammer or something. Maybe something similar. Abaddon the Pilgrim, something like that.
I mean, there's no consistency in these things, but it is funny to think of. Heave.
It's just a demon name.
Yeet.
On verse 7, he suspends the earth over nothing. In the Masoretic text reads, Tole Eretz al Belima. Habel writes that the author deviates from the traditional Israelite cosmology, where the earth was believed to rest on pillars fixed in the watery deep, while the heaven was supported by pillars, which he takes to be the mountains. Here, the earth hangs over Belima, which means emptiness or nothing. The north above, where God dwells, and the earth below, where human dwell, are suspended mysteriously above empty space. He notes that some have suggested that the poet employs ideas from Greek thought, such as Pythagoras, or that the poet had his own cosmological framework. He writes, however, that this is secondary. Quote, clearly he has Bildad emphasizing that the domain of God above or the deep below the earth are totally inaccessible to mortals. For Job to find God in either place is a futile dream. Compare 23 verses 3, 8, and 9, end quote. Hartley comments, quote, although this description does appear to coincide rather well with a contemporary understanding of space, the worldview behind the imagery must be interpreted from the author's perspective. North, Tzafon, in this context, is not a direction, but a spatial term for the high heavens, the place of God's throne. Standing after the verb stretch out, nata, it occurs in place of the usual term heavens, for example, 9:8 and Isaiah 40:22. This position is further supported by the fact that that earth, which is often coupled with or parallel to heavens, for example, in Genesis 1:1, Isaiah 44:23 and 24, here stands parallel to north. In Ugaritic mythology, the north was the place where the divine assembly gathered, and Mount Tzafon, mountain of the north, was the dwelling place of Baal, the chief god. Borrowing from this imagery, some Old Testament passages use the term the north, quote unquote, to refer to the place where God reigns supreme. For example, Psalms 48:3, which is 21. In Isaiah 14:13-14, it is clear that the north is used symbolically, not geographically, for God's habitation. In this passage, then, the north, the highest height, is the opposite of Sheol and Abaddon, verse 6, the lowest depths. On verse 8, Clines notes that the clouds are conceived of as the water skins of the sky, as we see in 38:37. At creation, God wrapped up all the rain waters in the clouds, but since his power is so great, they did not burst due to all the weight of the water. Habel writes that clouds are a favorite subject of the poet in Job, and operate as major symbols of the mysterious and marvelous in the celestial domain, as we see in 36:29, 37:15 and 16, 38:37. While the clouds hide God's mysterious presence, they do not prevent him from seeing the actions of humans on earth, as we see in 22:13-14.
On this thing about Zahon being I'm reading it the same way, or it sounds to me like the Muslim tradition of God's hotel is in the top of the expanse of the firmament. Is that the interpretation that these people are explaining?
Did you not listen to what I said? I guess
I'm
not.
asking about what Tomer's people say.
In verse 8?
Yeah.
Could you repeat that, please? I was confused.
In the Quran, heaven is essentially, or God's hotel, the central part of heaven is in the top of the expanse of the firmament.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like the person you were just reading a moment ago had the same interpretation.
I mean, I think so. Like, I think it's common depiction that God lies above the heavens, right? Above the firmament,
Okay.
if I'm
But
correct.
he also sort of touches the earth at the point of kind of the tent peg, which could have been that mountaintop, which was also the north.
Okay.
That's
Everybody has a sacred mountain where God can touch.
And then Chase Hatchet 4756 offers $9.99. Thank you. It says, I just helped an old lady pay for her groceries. Old lady started crying and thanking me. Ain't no thing to me, but I'm atheist out here being a better Christian than real Christians. What a world, huh? Yeah, I gave $2 to a beggar yesterday, and he introduced himself to me and told me about which two radio stations play the best gospel music. And he wanted me to listen to gospel music. And I'm like, well, that's okay. I'm atheist. And he says, no, you can still get with God. I'm like,
I don't want to. I'm good.
Which proves you don't give gospels to atheists.
Yeah.
Administering medicine to the dead.
Indeed.
I just hate the chat at the moment. Sorry. Okay. On verse 9, Habel notes that clouds have various functions in the Habel notes that clouds have various functions in the design of the cosmos, and may serve as God's celestial chariots in his movements across the heavens, as we see in Psalms 104:4. Yahweh even usurped the title Rider of the Clouds, once born by Baal, the Canaanite storm god, as we see in Psalm 68:5, 34, which is 4:33. which is 4 and 33. Clouds also veiled God's presence at Sinai, as we see in Exodus 19:16, 24, 15, and 16, in the tabernacle in Exodus 40, 34, 38, and in the Solomonic temple in 1 Kings 8, 10, and 11. Thus, the clouds functions as God's mask, both identifying his manifest operations and veiling his essential being, i.e. his glory or face. Habel notes that the traditional motif of the cloud covering the ark to hide God's glory or face is here associated with the realm of God's celestial abode. The face of his throne is covered by his cloud, i.e. God's own cloud. He notes that the association of face with the throne may also have hidden allusions to the presence of God. He writes, quote, "The relevance of this pivotal verse in relation to Job's earlier speeches is immediately evident when we recall Job's desire to find God's dwelling place in 23:3 in the north, 23:9, and his obsession with presenting his suit before God's face, panim, in 23:4. Even though that face terrified him, 23:15, not only is God's abode suspended far above the void, his face is veiled by an awesome cloud, quote unquote, which functions as his mask and agent. Perhaps there is even a wordplay between Job's cry after searching in the north, I cannot behold him, lo achaz, in 23:9a, and God's act of spreading, me achez, in 26:9a, his cloud across his throne in the celestial north. Job sought to behold God's face, but God hides even the face of his throne.
Yeah, so there's nowhere you can go to sue for justice, and God will just keep doing whatever the fuck he wants, and you have to call it good. Love it.
Was that it, Tomer?
No, of course not. On verse 10, Clines comments, quote, "The cosmology implied here is not entirely clear. The general Near Eastern conception was of the earth as a disk floating on an ocean. The furthest horizon, therefore, lies upon the oceans, and the solid firmament of Genesis 1 will rest upon those waters all around that horizon."
I'm glad
Even
we get that admission, at least.
Yes.
I'm surprised to hear that.
Even in ancient times, it was of course known that the horizon recedes as one approaches it, and so the reference must be to the furthest horizon, i.e. the rim of the earth's surface. In Proverbs 8:27, we find God at creation drawing a circle, which must be that horizon, on the face of the deep. In Genesis 1:2, there was, before creation, darkness over the whole face of the deep water, and God's creative act was to separate light and darkness, as day and night, two realities that alternate in the same physical space. Here, on the other hand, it appears that the horizon is also the dividing line between light and darkness, and that beyond the horizon there is a permanent area of darkness. Quote, "Within the circle is the region of light, without it the region of darkness," end quote, according to Piquet. Thus, the confine, chok, that is drawn as a circle, chug, is as far as ad, the completeness, and tachlit, which means to say boundary of light and darkness, literally light with darkness, or im choshech. On verse 11, the pillars of heaven, in Hebrew amudei shemaim, are only referred to here in the Old Testament and are generally taken to refer to, quote, "the distant mountains on the horizon that support the huge canopy of the sky," end quote, according to Hartley. In 2 Samuel 22:8, we find foundations of the heavens, in Hebrew mosdot hashamayim, which are designated as the pillars of the mountains, mosadei harim, in Psalms 18:8, which is 7. Habel writes that the common imagery reflected in Psalms 104, 6-9, and verses 10-11 here makes it apparent that the shuddering mountains are those which emerged from the primordial waters at God's thunderous rebuke, ga'ara. Thus, the raising of the mountains to support the sky is balanced by the restraining of the waters with a decreed boundary.
So another reference to the earth being flat again.
There seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding as to what mountains are. I mean, the Muslims say they're pegs to hold the earth in place, which is very wrong. And here we're referring to them as pegs to hold the sky in place, which is also very wrong.
Go ahead, Tomer.
Yes. On verse 12, Habel notes that the subjugation of the primordial chaos waters is a widespread myth of the ancient Near East. For example, Marduk conquering Tiamat in Enuma Elish and Baal conquering Yam in the Canaanite Baal myth, which was appropriated and transformed in various ways in Israelite tradition. Earlier, Job accused God of treating him like the chaos monster Yam in 7:12, and deplored the violent tendencies which are illustrated by God's angry smiting of Rahab's helpers. God uses understanding or wisdom, in Hebrew tvunah, to strike down Rahab. Clines notes that several commentators took this as a reference to the craft employed by Marduk, called wisest of the gods, in defeating Tiamat. He writes, however, that it is a natural enough idea in any culture to represent the work of creating as demanding extraordinary wisdom. As Dom puts it, quote, his victory is due not simply to his might, but also to his intelligence, which chaos lacks. And finally, on 13, the gliding serpent, in Hebrew, Nachash Bariach. This entity is also mentioned in Isaiah 27:1, where it is called Leviathan, the twisting serpent, in Hebrew, Akalton, and associated with the sea, dragon, Tanin. Compare Targum, which reads, his hand created Leviathan, which is like a stirred-up serpent. The word Bariach is usually understood to mean fleeing or elusive, but Habel suggests reading evil, based on the Ugaritic Barach and the cuneiform equivalent Barium of the Sumerian Chul, evil. He also notes that the piercing of the chaos serpent is reminiscent of the battle between Marduk and Tiamat, who is split like a shellfish, and her body transformed into segments of the universe. The designation of the serpent as evil is also found in the Baal myth, where it refers to the crooked serpent, Leviathan, who is smitten by Baal. Clines notes 8 possible renditions of Bariach, including straight, according to Gordes, primeval, according to Albright, dangerous, destructive, according to W. Hellman, and convulsive or torturous, according to C. Rabin, but chose for his translation the more common fleeing. And ancient Christians, we have, as usual, the fathers also see in Job's words a prophetic message. In his speech, he announces the spreading of the gospel and the destruction of the devil through the power of Christ, according to Philip and Ephraim.
Sure, Jan.
Vacuous.
Yes, and of course the serpent is Satan. Of course.
Obviously.
Obviously. Yes.
For instance, yes, and Ephraim, for instance, writes, these words eloquently signify the perceptible serpent that must be annihilated by Christ's death. He calls Satan a fleeing and deserting serpent in order to indicate his flight from the company of the heavenly powers, and also because he hoped to escape the punishment of his crime.
Right. So it's not the reference to this great myth of antiquity where the gods vanquished the primordial serpent and, subject it to the chaos monster, to the rule of order and light and reason. No. It's the little snake in the garden guy. Yeah, it's him. That's much cooler. And
Yeah.
totally
So
modern.
I looked it up, the chaos monster, because I wanted to see the various names of it. And they bring up the Babylonian Tiamat, defeated by Marduk, and one I've never heard of, strangely. And this is strange that I haven't heard of this one. The Egyptian Apep, giant serpent fighting Ra.
Yeah, it happens every single night.
Apophis.
That's
Yeah.
yes, that is like during the journey through the night, he goes to the 12 gates and fights the snake.
Yeah, the
Well,
Greek.
that means that the next giant snake I get is going to have to be named Apep. Especially if I adopt one of those wild ones that sometimes somebody's snake gets out and then they need animal control doesn't have the means to house it, and so they need to. I'm on the list for people to adopt if somebody if a giant python gets loose and they need to rehome it. So I might end up with, like a few months ago, there was a 15-foot reticulated python that was just out in the neighborhood.
Yeah, Apep or Apophis would work quite well.
Please do not release giant snakes into your neighborhood.
Yeah.
to ours instead.
Mm.
Anyway, I don't think we're going to move on to the next one. Correct?
Well, we've done
No.
No,
Yeah.
we're not moving on to the next one.
no.
probably.
We've the sheer amount of commentary. 26 wasn't that long, but
No.
the sheer amount of commentary on it.
That was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So,
And, like,
are we doing a special session? Because I remember somebody had made noise of that since we missed a Saturday.
okay. No.
Let me
No?
look at my schedule.
Sorry. Yes. What?
Should we do a midweek?
We should. I think
Yeah,
we
we-
should. I mean,
I-
my week here. My week is generally free this week. So.
Okay.
yes.
Doing regular time of day.
Yep. I
Or-
most
I
days
guess
I
yes.
can make that work.
Okay.
If-
Which
If
day?
nothing else comes to, yeah, I don't mind
Wednesday's a
Wednesday.
bit, yeah, but I could probably still make it work.
Okay. Are we? What? Somebody mentioned Tuesday earlier. We're doing Tuesday.
We could do Tuesday.
Tuesday's
Yeah.
fine.
Lawrence.
Tuesday. What day is that?
It's Epiphany.
That's the day after Monday, Lawrence.
No, I get that, but I was wondering what day of the week. Or what day? Wait, day number?
January 6th.
No, it's 6th.
That's a
Yeah, we can do that.
Yay! January 6th.
that's a
Nothing
good
interesting
day.
ever happened on that.
yeah. That's a
That's
good
a
day.
very good day.
Maybe we'll see something similar this time. This year.
I really don't have any faith in anyone who gave the vow to protect their nation from all enemies, foreign or domestic. They seem to not really do anything on the domestic side of that. So good luck.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing Job 27 on
Yes.
Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll see y'all then.
Yeah.
See you then.
Lawrence, no last words? Wait, what?
Yeah, I suppose. So if I don't know if people are interested, I do have my. I could always post it again. I do have my paper on Job 26:7 in the Discord, so you can read the full thing. But that's definitely something you should join. Is the Discord, because that's where everything.
You have a Discord?
Yeah. That's where
Yeah.
everything goes down. That's where everything happens. And the place is happening, as the kids say these days.
It's the least chaotic Discord.
It probably is. Discord can be quite chaotic.
Hence the name.
Yes.
chaotic.
Behold.
Chaotic is, I think, just saying that's a very mild expression to say so.
I think Discordia is like the Roman name for Eros, god of chaos. Something like that.
Discord is a goddess.
Yeah, Discordia.
Tomer, take us
All right.
out.
I don't want to take you out.
Okay, fine.
I'll take you for a ride.
That was